Your ex-wife collapsed. She's pregnant. And the doctors don't think she's going to survive the night. Adrian Valenti did not move. The phone pressed against his ear. The rain hit the window. And every wall he had built over the past 3 months, every reason he told himself the divorce was right, that she was better off without him, that letting her go was the bravest thing he had ever done, came apart in 3 seconds. He had protected her from his world, and his world had found her anyway. If this story already has your heart, subscribe to this channel, drop a comment with the city you're watching from, and let's see how far this story has traveled. Now, let's begin. The office was quiet at 10 p.m. the way Adrian Valenti preferred it. No noise, no visitors, no one asking questions he did not feel like answering. His desk was clear except for 2 things: a glass of scotch he had not touched, and a folder his attorney had sent over that morning full of signatures and numbers and clean legal language that made the end of a marriage look like the closing of a real estate deal. He was not reading it. He was staring at the rain. 3 months since the divorce. 3 months since he watched Sophia Bennett walk out of his front door with 1 suitcase and a silence so complete it felt like the house had lost air. 3 months since he told himself he had done the right thing. That leaving her, letting her go, stepping back, removing himself from the center of her life was the only choice a man in his position could make. He still believed that. He told himself that every single morning, and most mornings he almost believed it. His private phone rang. Not the business line, not the number his associates used. The private one, the one only 6 people in the world had access to, the one he carried for emergencies, for family, for things that could not be routed through assistance or security, or the careful systems that kept his world organized. He looked at the screen. Unknown number, local area code, a 2 and 12 prefix he did not recognize. He almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Something made him answer. Mr. Valenti. The voice on the other end was male-controlled, clinical. A doctor's voice, the kind trained to deliver terrible news without letting it shake. My name is Dr. Ramon Ortega. I'm calling from St. Catherine's Emergency Clinic on 11th Avenue. I apologize for contacting you directly. I found this number listed as an emergency contact in some paperwork we retrieved from a patient. Adrian said nothing. He waited. The patient's name is Sophia Bennett. She was brought in approximately 40 minutes ago after being found unconscious outside the 51st Street subway station. The glass of scotch did not move. Adrian did not move. The rain kept going. Mr. Valenti, the doctor said, and there was something careful in his voice now, something measured the way people speak when they are carrying more than one piece of bad news at once. I need to inform you of her condition. Ms. Bennett is 4 months pregnant. Severe dehydration. Malnutrition. Her blood pressure is dangerously low. We are doing everything we can, but I'm on my way. He was already standing. The folder with its clean legal language hit the floor. He did not pick it up. The drive took 11 minutes. His driver did not ask questions. Marco had worked for Adrian for 9 years, and he understood the difference between the silence that meant patience and the silence that meant something was wrong. Tonight's silence filled the car like smoke, and Marco did not say a single word from Midtown to 11th Avenue. Adrian's mind did not stop the whole ride. 4 months pregnant. He did the math in his head the way you do when you already know the answer, but keep checking because you cannot accept it yet. The divorce was finalized 3 months ago. Before that, there had been weeks of legal proceedings of attorneys and separation agreements, and the slow mechanical dismantling of everything they had built together. Before that, he stopped calculating. He knew. He already knew. The child was his, and she had never told him. That was the part his mind kept circling. Not the pregnancy that was a revelation, but it followed its own logic. What kept catching was the silence. 3 months. Sophia had known she was carrying his child for at least part of that time, and she had said nothing. Had walked out of his house with 1 suitcase and said nothing. Had gone to wherever she went, had lived however she had been living, and said nothing. Why? The question sat in his chest like something heavy. Why hadn't she told him? The emergency clinic on 11th Avenue was small, a neighborhood facility, the kind that existed in the gaps between the major hospitals, serving the people who could not always afford the bigger rooms. The wait area was half full. Fluorescent lights, plastic chairs. A woman with 2 children asleep across her lap. Adrian walked to the desk without slowing down. "Sophia Bennett," he said. "I'm Adrian Valenti. I received a call from Dr. Ortega." The nurse behind the desk looked up at him, looked back at her screen, and picked up the phone with the quiet urgency of someone who had been told to move quickly when this man arrived. 20 seconds later, a door opened and Dr. Ortega came through it. He was younger than his voice suggested, mid-40s. Dark hair, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead, the kind of composed expression that came from years of learning to hold himself steady in front of frightened people. "Mr. Valenti." He extended his hand. "Thank you for coming quickly. How is she?" No greeting, no pretense. Adrian had never seen the value in either when there were actual things to discuss. Dr. Ortega did not flinch at the directness. He gestured toward a quieter corridor, and they walked while he talked. "She's stabilized in the last 30 minutes. We have her on IV fluids and we're monitoring the baby closely. The fetal heartbeat is strong, that's the best news I can give you." But Ms. Bennett's condition when she arrived was serious. She was severely dehydrated. Her blood sugar was critically low. Based on what her body is showing us, she has been living under significant nutritional stress for at least 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. Adrian said nothing. But something moved behind his face. "She was conscious enough when she arrived to give us limited information," the doctor continued. "She was resistant to emergency contact notification. We found your name in paperwork. She was carrying a copy of what appeared to be a legal agreement. Your number was listed. She had not marked you as an active emergency contact, but given the circumstances and her condition, I made a judgment call. You made the right call. The priority right now is keeping her stable and ensuring the pregnancy is not further compromised. The next 24 hours are critical. We want to observe her overnight and run additional tests in the morning." They stopped outside a closed door. "She's awake," Dr. Ortega said. "She knows we called you. I want to be direct with you, Mr. Valenti. She asked us not to." Adrian looked at the door. "And I'm asking you to consider the emotional stress on a pregnant patient in a fragile physical state before you go in there with—" "I understand," Adrian said quietly. "Thank you, doctor." He pushed open the door. The room was small. One narrow bed. One window. The rain came through it gray and indifferent, and the monitor beside the bed beeped with a steadiness that felt almost like a reprimand, a machine insisting that life continued even when everything else felt impossible. Sophia was lying against the pillows with an IV line in her left arm and her right hand resting flat across her stomach. She had lost weight. He could see it in her face, in the hollows beneath her cheekbones, in the way her collarbone pressed against the edge of her hospital gown. Her hair was damp from the rain and pushed back from her face without any of the careful arrangement she used to keep. She was the most real he had ever seen her, and the most frightened. She looked at him the moment he came through the door, and her expression did not soften. "Get out." Her voice was quiet. That surprised him. He had expected volume. Sophia had never been a woman who shrank from confrontation, but tonight her voice was just stripped down, too tired for volume. Just the words themselves, plain and direct. "Get out, Adrian." He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. "Sophia, I told them not to call you." She pressed her back into the pillow like she was trying to create more distance. "I said explicitly, I made it clear. You were unconscious on a subway platform." His voice stayed level. "You're 4 months pregnant. What exactly did you expect to happen?" "I expected people to respect what I said." "Then you should have stayed conscious." It came out more sharply than he intended. He saw it land, saw her jaw tighten, and he walked the rest of the way into the room and stopped a few feet from the bed, close enough to be present, but far enough to give her the space her body language was demanding. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. That was, "I'm sorry." She looked at the window. He looked at her hand still resting across her stomach. Something happened in his chest that he did not have a name for. When were you going to tell me? The question came out quietly. He did not make it an accusation. He worked hard not to. But she heard something in it anyway, because she turned from the window and looked at him with an expression that was equal parts exhaustion and something older, something that had been sitting in her for a long time. Tell you what, Adrian, that I was pregnant. Her voice cracked slightly, then steadied. Or that after the divorce I had nothing, no money, no access to my accounts, no attorney returning my calls. Nothing. He went very still. What do you mean, no money? I mean exactly what I said. Her eyes held his. The settlement your lawyers promised. The account transfers. The arrangements your attorney said were being handled. None of it came through. The accounts were empty. Every number I had for your legal team stopped working, and when I tried to reach you directly... She stopped, looked back at the window, her hand pressed gently against her stomach. No one picked up, Adrian. I never ignored your calls. I called you 11 times. Her voice did not rise. It just went flat. The kind of flat that comes after someone has finished being angry and arrived somewhere colder. The first week after the divorce, 11 times. Not one call went through. I thought... She exhaled. I told myself you had blocked me, that it was your way of making the separation clean. I was angry. I was also pregnant, and I had no money, and I had just signed my name to a divorce I did not fully understand, and suddenly you were just... She shook her head. Gone. Adrian crossed the room in 3 strides and sat down in the chair beside her bed. I did not block you, he said. I never blocked you. Sophia, look at me. She did. I never blocked you. I never received a single call from you. Not one. The silence that followed was the kind that changes the shape of a room. Then who did? She asked. It was a small question. She asked it quietly, without drama. Just 2 words placed carefully in the air between them. But Adrian heard everything underneath it, the months she had spent believing she had been abandoned, the pride that had kept her from seeking help elsewhere. The fierce, stubborn silence of a woman who had refused to become a victim, even when every system around her was failing. I don't know yet, he said. But you're going to find out. Yes. Something shifted in her face. Not forgiveness, he was not foolish enough to read it as that. But recognition. The particular look of someone who has known a person long enough to understand when they are telling the truth. The baby is healthy. His voice dropped on the question. Something involuntary happened to it. She softened slightly, just slightly. Strong heartbeat. The doctor said the baby was... Her voice caught. She pressed her lips together and recovered. Strong. They said strong. He exhaled. He had not realized he was holding his breath. Adrian. She said his name differently than she had a few minutes ago. Not a command. Not a wall, just his name. I can't go back to your house. I know. I can't pretend the last 3 months didn't happen. I can't just... I'm not asking you to. She looked at him carefully. Then what are you asking? He was quiet for a moment. Outside, the rain had not let up. The monitor kept its steady rhythm. In the room next to hers, someone was speaking in low voices, and the sound filtered through the thin wall like something from a different world. I'm asking you to stay somewhere safe tonight, he said. I'm asking you to let me find out what happened to your accounts, your calls, your attorney. And I'm asking you to let me... He paused. Let me be here, in whatever way you'll allow. For the baby, if nothing else. Sophia looked at him for a long time. For the baby, she repeated. For the baby, he said. And because I spent 3 months telling myself you were fine. His jaw tightened. And you were on a subway platform in the rain. They moved her to his private medical facility 2 hours later. Not his home, he was careful about that. The facility was a separate building staffed by his personal medical team, equipped in ways the small clinic on 11th Avenue could not match. Clean, private, secure. A place where she could sleep without worrying about noise or cost or what tomorrow looked like. She agreed to the transfer with conditions. She made them clearly and without hesitation. My own room, my own door, No one comes in without knocking. And I want a phone, my own phone, not one your people set up. Done. And I want to call my friend Kara in the morning. She doesn't know where I've been living, and she's going to be worried. Something in that sentence, she doesn't know where I've been living, landed like a stone. He processed it quietly. Done, he said again. She nodded once and looked away. While Sophia slept, Adrian worked. He did not sleep. Sleep was not something he considered. He sat in the small office adjacent to her floor, his phone in his hand, and he began making calls. The first was to his head of security, a man named Reyes, who had been with him for 15 years and who answered on the second ring, regardless of the hour. I need you to pull everything, Adrian said without preamble. Every transaction from the settlement accounts established for Sophia Bennett. Every call routed through my private line in the past 3 months. I want to know who had access to that routing. I want to know where her money went. And I want to know whose hands were on any of it. How soon? Now. Understood. Hi-Mod 3 more calls after that. Legal. Financial. One to a man whose name he never spoke on a phone that had any connection to the business. A man who operated in the spaces between official channels and who could find information that accountants and attorneys missed. Each conversation was brief, precise. The language of someone who already suspected what they were going to find, but needed the confirmation before they could move. By 2 a.m., the first pieces were coming back. Reyes arrived in person at 2:30. He was a broad-shouldered man, gray at the temples, the kind of calm that came from experience rather than nature. He sat across from Adrian and placed a tablet on the table between them. The settlement account was established correctly, he said. The initial transfer was authorized. But 3 days after the divorce was finalized, the transfer was rerouted. Rerouted where? Shell account, 4 layers. Whoever set it up knew what they were doing. Reyes scrolled. It took some reaching to get through. The final destination was an account controlled by... He paused. The kind of pause a careful man makes when he wants to make sure he has someone's full attention. Dominic Ferraro. The name fell into the room. Adrian did not react visibly, but he went very, very quiet. Dominic Ferraro was not an outsider. He was not a rival family. He was not someone who appeared on the long list of people who had reason to want Adrian harmed. He was a man who had been inside Adrian's organization for 11 years, who attended the same meetings, who sat at the same table, who had on more than one occasion told Adrian that the one thing that kept him from being truly untouchable was the fact that his wife made him soft. Adrian had dismissed it each time. He remembered that now. The calls, he said. Reyes pulled up a second screen. All 11 of her outgoing calls were intercepted at the routing level, diverted before they reached your private line. It would have taken someone with direct access to the communication architecture to set it up, not a hack. Someone with permissions. Someone inside. Yes. Ferraro. Reyes said nothing. He did not need to. Adrian stood up from the table and walked to the window. The city below was still dark, still wet, still moving with its indifferent early morning energy. 11 calls. Sophia had called him 11 times and believed he was silent. She had believed he had turned away from her, had drawn the only conclusion a reasonable person could draw from a man who does not pick up his phone, that the silence was intentional. That the ending was complete. She had carried that for 3 months. Had carried his child while carrying the belief that he did not care enough to answer. And the whole time Dominic Ferraro had been sitting at his table. Where is Ferraro now? Adrian asked. His residence. We've had eyes on him for the last 40 minutes. He's not aware yet. Keep it that way. And when he figures it out... Adrian turned from the window. He won't figure it out, he said, because we are going to move before he has the chance to think. Morning came slowly. The sky outside turned from black to gray to a washed-out pale that looked like the city was still deciding whether to fully commit to a new day. In her room, Sophia slept. The monitors reported steady numbers. Down the corridor, the night staff moved through their quiet routines. Adrian had not slept, but he had arrived at something that felt like clarity. He sat in the corridor with a coffee. He was not drinking, and he let himself think, really think about what Sophia had said in that small clinic room. 11 calls. 6 to 8 weeks of malnutrition. A woman alone with a pregnancy she had every right to share with him, had tried to share with him, had been prevented from sharing by someone who believed she made him weak. He had built something in this city that no one touched. And inside that structure, someone had decided that Sophia was a liability, had decided without asking him, had moved against her without his knowledge, and had done it in a way that left no fingerprints, no visible cruelty, just a quiet disappearance of money and communication that looked from the outside like a clean separation. The precision of it made him colder than anger did. I understood cruelty. He had lived with cruelty. What he did not forgive, what landed in a place inside him that did not negotiate, was someone making a decision about Sophia's life without his permission. That was not strategy. That was a message. And it was time to send one back. At 7 a.m., Sophia's door opened, and she stood in the frame in hospital clothes, her hair still loose, her hand resting against the door jamb for support. "You didn't sleep," she said, looking at him. He looked up from his bench. "No." She was quiet for a moment. Then she sat down on the bench beside him, not close a foot of space between them, but beside him. He noticed that. "The food they brought at 5 in the morning was actually decent," she said. "I'll tell them you said so." She looked at her hands. "Have you found anything?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Yes." Her head turned toward him. "I know who took the money," he said. "I know who blocked the calls." She went still. "I know why." His jaw worked slightly. "And I know it happened because someone inside my organization decided you were the reason I had a vulnerability. That as long as you were in my life or connected to my life, I was reachable in a way that made me controllable." She absorbed that. "So they erased me," she said. Not a question. Just the shape of the truth. "They tried to," he said. She was quiet for a long time. The early morning light came through the window at the end of the corridor, and she sat in it with the stillness of someone working through something that had too many pieces to handle all at once. Her hand moved to her stomach again, that gesture that he was beginning to recognize as something she did without thinking, a reflex of protection. "Adrian." "Yes, I need you to understand something." She turned toward him fully. "I'm not going back to being a piece of your world that you have to protect by keeping separate from everything else. I spent 3 months being erased by people I never met over decisions I had no part in because someone in your life decided I was a liability. I almost—" Her voice thinned. "My baby almost—" "I know." His voice came out rougher than he intended. "Then you have to understand that whatever comes next, I'm not a thing that gets protected from a distance. I'm a person, with a child. And if we are going to figure out what this is—" She gestured between them. "Then I need to be part of it, not shielded from it. Part of it." The corridor was very quiet. Adrian looked at her. At the woman who had collapsed on a subway platform, who had survived 6 weeks of malnutrition without asking anyone for help, who was sitting beside him at 7 a.m. in a hospital corridor, telling him exactly what she needed with a directness that he had somewhere in the last 3 months convinced himself was too dangerous to live alongside. He had been wrong about that. He was beginning to understand how wrong. "Okay," he said. She blinked. "Okay," she repeated like she had expected a different answer. "Okay," he said again. "You're part of it." She held his eyes for a moment. And then, for the first time since he had walked into that clinic room on 11th Avenue, Sophia Bennett let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for 3 months. It started as things always do with someone making a mistake they didn't know they were making. At 9 a.m., Dominic Ferraro's phone received a message from an internal line he trusted, a line that told him Adrian was at the facility, but had not yet connected the rerouted accounts to anyone inside the organization. Ferraro read it twice. He replied with 2 words, "Good. Continue." What he did not know was that the message had not come from an ally. It had come from Reyes, and his reply had just confirmed everything. Adrian received the screenshot at 9:14. He read it once, set the phone face down on the bench, looked at the window at the end of the corridor for about 4 seconds. Then he picked the phone back up and dialed Reyes. "Tonight," he said. "We'll be ready," Reyes said. He ended the call. Behind him down the corridor, Sophia's door was still open. He could hear the quiet sounds of her moving around the room, the low murmur of the television. She had turned on the ordinary sounds of a morning beginning. He sat with that for a moment. The ordinary sounds. He could not remember the last time he had sat still long enough to notice them. By noon, the picture was complete. Not just Ferraro. Not just rerouted money and intercepted calls. Reyes and the man whose name Adrian never said on a connected phone had found 3 other layers beneath it. A coordinated effort that extended beyond one man's ambition and touched the edges of something much larger. Ferraro was not acting alone. How was the hand that moved, but there was a mind behind him. A rival structure, old money organized patient, that had been watching Adrian's organization for 2 years and had identified Sophia as the pressure point. The theory was elegant in its cruelty. If you cannot move a man through force, you remove the thing that makes him human. You strip away the person who reaches his conscience. You leave him isolated, efficient, predictable. And then you move. What the theory had not accounted for was that the thing they considered his weakness was at this moment sitting in a corridor 2 floors up, telling him exactly how she planned to stand beside him rather than behind him. That was not a weakness. That was something else entirely. Adrian sat with the full picture spread across the table in front of him. Documents, account records, intercepted messages, a detailed map of who had touched what and when, and he felt something he had not felt in a long time. Not anger. Not the cold calculation he used in business. Something older. He was a man who had been given back something he thought he had chosen to lose, and the people who had tried to prevent that were about to find out what happened when you take something from someone who built an empire on the principle that what was his stayed his. At 2 p.m. he went back upstairs. Sophia was sitting up in bed, the tablet he had arranged for her beside her, her lunch half-eaten on the tray. She looked better than she had the night before. Color in her face. Eyes sharper. The particular energy of someone who had slept and eaten and found a few hours of solid ground. She looked up when he came in. "You have the face you get when you know something," she said. He paused. "You remember that? I was married to you for 4 years, Adrian. I know every face you have." He sat down in the chair beside her bed. "I know who did it," he said. "All of it. And I know they weren't working alone." She was quiet, waiting. "It goes deeper than Ferraro. There's a structure behind him. People who have been building toward this for 2 years. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "They chose you because they believed you were the way to reach me. The soft point. The thing I couldn't protect without becoming distracted. And they were right," she said. Not bitterly, just accurately. "They were half right," he said. "You are the way to reach me. But they got the rest of it wrong." She looked at him. "They thought removing you would make me harder to reach," he said. "What it actually did..." He stopped. Started again. "What it actually did was remove the only person who made me want to use that part of myself carefully." The room was quiet. Outside New York moved through its midday noise horns and construction, and the constant low percussion of a city that never fully stops. In here, something different was happening. Something that had no language in the world Adrian usually operated in. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "What I do," he said. She held his eyes. "And then what?" He looked at her hand across her stomach, at the woman who had survived what was meant to erase her. "Then," he said, "I'm going to figure out how to be in a room with you and not spend every second pretending I don't know exactly how badly I got this wrong." Sophia looked at him for a long time. The monitor beeped. The rain somewhere above them had finally stopped. "That's a start," she said quietly. And it was. The name Dominic Ferraro had been in Adrian's organization for 11 years. That was the part that kept returning. Not the theft. Not the intercepted calls. Not even the careful, methodical way someone had engineered Sophia's disappearance from his life. What kept surfacing in the back of Adrian's mind behind the strategy and the calculation and the cold precision with which he was now planning his response was the time. 11 years. Ferraro had attended the funeral when Adrian's father died, had sat 3 rows back and shook his hand at the reception and said, "He was a great man. You'll carry it well." Had been in the room for deals that built the foundation of everything Adrian controlled. Had known things, real things, the kind that could not be unknown, and had used none of them. Until Sophia. Until he decided that the woman Adrian married was the single variable that needed to be removed. Adrian did not share this with Sophia that afternoon. She had eaten her lunch, and her color had improved, and the monitors were reporting numbers that the medical team described as encouraging, and he was not going to sit beside her bed and explain that the man who had destroyed 3 months of her life was someone he had invited into every important room he owned. That conversation was coming. But not yet. What came first was Reyes at 3 p.m. with a folder that was thicker than the one from that morning. "There's more," Reyes said. Adrian looked at him. "There's always more." They sat in the small office 2 floors below Sophia's room, and Reyes laid it out with the kind of systematic precision that Adrian had valued in him for 15 years. Page by page, transaction by transaction. The full architecture of what Ferraro had built, not over weeks, not since the divorce, but over the better part of a year. The plan had started 8 months ago, long before the divorce papers were drawn. He began building the case internally. Reyes said that your marriage was a liability. He didn't argue against Sophia personally. He framed it as a strategic vulnerability that your emotional investment in her safety was creating hesitation in business decisions. That you were pulling punches in negotiations because you were worried about exposure that could put her at risk. Was he wrong? Adrian asked. Reyes paused. He wasn't entirely wrong. No, Adrian said. He wasn't. That was the part that required honesty. He had adjusted decisions because of her. Had declined certain partnerships because the exposure would have made his personal life a target. Had kept them at a distance from the most dangerous edges of his world, because Sophia was there, and she was not part of that world, and he had believed that protecting her meant keeping those 2 things permanently separated. Ferraro had seen it, had watched it, and had decided with the patience of someone who plans 12 moves ahead, that the solution was not to change Adrian's behavior, because Adrian would not be changed, but to remove the cause of it. He started working on the legal team first, Reyes continued. Not directly, nothing traceable. He arranged for the attorney managing your personal accounts to be moved to a different advisory role. Brought in a replacement he had connections to. By the time the divorce proceedings began, the attorney handling Sophia's settlement was effectively working for Ferraro. Her calls to my legal team. Answered, logged, and never forwarded. Reyes turned a page. She called 6 times in the first 2 weeks after the divorce. Tried to understand why her account transfers hadn't come through. Every call was received by someone who told her the process was ongoing. That settlement transfers at this level take time, that she should be patient. And then they stopped answering altogether. Correct. After the 4th week, the number was disconnected. By that point, she had no way to escalate through the legal channel. Her only remaining option was to reach you directly. Which is when Ferraro moved on my private line. Reyes nodded. The routing intercept required physical access to the communication system. Someone with standing authorization. We tracked it to a 30-minute window a Tuesday evening 6 weeks ago, when Ferraro was in the building for a meeting. He paused. The meeting ran long. At some point he used that time. 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks ago. Sophia was somewhere in the city, already under financial strain, already carrying a pregnancy alone, picking up her phone and trying to reach the one person she still had a legal and human right to contact, and the signal had been quietly, invisibly bent away from him. Adrian's hand rested flat on the table. He was very still. "Where is he now?" he said. "Still at his residence. Our people have had eyes on him since last night. He had a phone call this morning separate from the decoy message we sent with someone we haven't fully identified yet." The conversation was short, encrypted, but the routing traces back to a server cluster we've seen before. The rival structure. Yes. Adrian stood up and walked to the window. Below, the city was doing what cities do, moving indifferent, full of its own concerns. He stood there for a moment and let himself feel the full weight of what was in front of him. Not the anger. Anger was easy. He could produce anger the way other men produced spreadsheets efficiently on demand, without it telling him anything useful. What was underneath the anger was harder. Ferraro had looked at Sofia, had looked at what she meant to Adrian, and had made a calculation, had decided that she was the crack in the wall. That if you removed her cleanly enough, quietly enough, the man she was connected to would become something simpler, something easier to manage. And what enraged Adrian, what sat in him like something with teeth, was that for 3 months the plan had appeared to work. He had been colder since the divorce, more isolated, more mechanical in his decisions. Everyone around him had noticed it, and most of them had attributed it to the natural recalibration of a man who had restructured his personal life. Man refocusing. But Ferraro had known it was grief, and had counted on Adrian's pride keeping him from recognizing it as such. "Get me everything on the contact he called this morning," Adrian said, still looking at the window. "I want a name by tonight. We're working on it. Work faster." He went back upstairs at 4 p.m. and found Sofia standing at her window. She had changed into clothes someone had brought at her request. Jeans, a sweater. Her own things delivered by her friend Kara, who had apparently cried for 20 minutes on the phone, and then shown up within the hour with a bag and a fury directed entirely at Adrian that Sofia had, according to the nurse, spent considerable effort redirecting. She turned when he came in. "Kara wants to come back tomorrow," she said. "I told her that was fine. I hope that's fine." "Of course it is." She studied him. She had always been able to read the frequency of his silences, which ones were productive, and which ones were carrying something heavier. She read this one in about 4 seconds. "You found more," she said. He sat down. "Yes." "Tell me." "Sofia, Adrian." Her voice was flat and patient and entirely immovable. "We had a conversation this morning about what I asked from you. Tell me." He looked at her standing there, 4 months pregnant, cheekbones still too prominent from what the last 6 weeks had done to her, wearing her own jeans and a gray sweater, with her arms crossed, looking at him with the kind of quiet authority that no one in his professional life would ever dare to direct at him. He told her. All of it. The 8 months of planning. The attorney. The legal team. Ferraro had quietly compromised. The intercepts. The decoy messages. The rival structure operating behind Ferraro like a current beneath the surface. She listened without interrupting. That was one of the things about Sofia that he had never fully deserved. She listened completely, not waiting for her turn, not preparing her response. Actually listening, taking in every piece, turning it over carefully before she said anything at all. When he finished, she sat down on the edge of the bed. 8 months, she said. Yes. He started planning this while we were still married. Yes. She was quiet. Then, did you know he felt that way? That he saw me as a liability? Adrian met her eyes. He said it to me directly, he said. Twice. Both times I dismissed it. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought it was handled. Because I told him to stay in his lane, and I believed he would. His jaw tightened. I was wrong. Yes. She said it without cruelty, just honestly. You were. The silence between them was not comfortable, but it was real, and that was something. So this person behind Ferraro, she said. The rival structure. What do they actually want? Control, he said. Not destruction. They don't want me removed from the city that creates chaos they can't manage. They want me operating at a level where I'm predictable, where I make decisions that can be anticipated and worked around, where I function like a machine rather than a person. And they thought removing me would accomplish that. They thought removing you would remove the part of me that makes unpredictable decisions. She looked at him for a moment. Ironically, she said, removing me did exactly what they wanted, for 3 months. He did not look away from her. Yes, he said quietly. And now they've made a different problem for themselves. He leaned forward. They had a version of me that was isolated and controlled. They've created a version of me that's angry and knows exactly who moved the pieces. Something moved across her face, not quite a smile, more like recognition. I want to ask you something, she said. Go ahead. The divorce. She held his gaze. I know now that they pushed toward it. Ferraro built the internal case for it, created pressure, framed me as a vulnerability. But Adrian, she paused. You made the decision. Not him. You. You're the one who decided leaving was protecting me. He held her gaze. Yes. Did you actually believe that? Or did you believe it because it was easier than admitting you were afraid? The question landed exactly where she intended it to. Howe was quiet for a long time. Both, he finally said. She nodded. Just once. Not forgiving. Not closing the door. Just acknowledging that at least he was standing still enough to say the honest thing. Okay, she said. Okay. Okay, she repeated. We can work with honest. By 6 p.m., the name came through. Reyes sent it in a secure message, 3 words and an address. Marcus Elian Voss. Adrian read it and sat with it for exactly 30 seconds. Marcus Voss was not a name from Adrian's world. He was not organized crime. Not a rival family in the traditional sense. Not someone who operated through the channels Adrian understood. He was something different. Old money, legitimate on the surface. The kind of wealth that had existed long enough to become invisible. He controlled 3 legitimate corporations, and beneath them a network of interests that overlapped with Adrian's territory in ways that were difficult to map precisely because they had never been mapped at all. Howe was the kind of man who never got his hands dirty because he never needed to. He found people like Ferraro and gave them ambition and direction and plausible deniability. And he had decided at some point in the last 2 years that Adrian Valenti was an obstacle. Adrian sent one reply to Reyes, set the meeting for tomorrow. Internal only. No advance notice to anyone outside our confirmed circle. Then he put the phone down and thought about Sophia upstairs. About the fact that what was now coming was not just about Ferraro. Not just about stolen money and intercepted calls. It was about a man who sat behind the curtain of legitimate business and had looked at a pregnant woman and decided she was an acceptable casualty in a strategy designed to reshape a city's power structure. He thought about that for a long time. At 7 p.m. he went back upstairs. Sophia had eaten dinner and was sitting in the chair by the window with the tablet, not reading, just holding it, looking out at the city lights with the expression of someone whose mind is working through something too large to hold all at once. She looked up when he came in. I've been thinking, she said. He sat down. About what? About the last 3 months. She set the tablet down. I want to tell you what it was actually like. Not the summary. The actual thing. He said nothing. He waited. The first week, she said, I told myself the money issue was a processing delay. I was embarrassed about it. I didn't want to ask anyone for help. I didn't want to look like I couldn't manage. So I just... She paused. I used what I had. My savings. Which wasn't much because I had stopped working when we got married, and when we divorced, I was starting from essentially zero. He held very still. The second week I tried the attorneys. I told you about the calls. By the third week, I understood that the settlement wasn't coming. I didn't understand why yet. I just knew it wasn't there. She looked at her hands. I got a job. 2, actually. One at a restaurant, just lunch shifts, because the dinner hours were too late for where I was living, and the neighborhood. She stopped. The neighborhood was not great. Where were you living? He asked. She looked at him. A room, she said. In a shared apartment in the Bronx. 4 other people. Communal kitchen. 1 bathroom. She held his gaze. I wasn't complaining about it. I want you to understand that I wasn't looking for you to feel guilty about the square footage. I was managing. I was working. I was figuring it out. Sophia, I'm not finished. She said it quietly but clearly. The 5th week I started feeling sick. I thought it was stress. I thought it was the scheduled 2 jobs and not sleeping enough. I didn't... Her voice thinned slightly. "I didn't even consider that I might be pregnant, because you and I had been careful and the timing was—" She exhaled. "I took a test because my coworker at the restaurant told me I looked like she had looked when she was pregnant with her second. And I took the test, and it was positive, and I sat on the floor of a shared bathroom in the Bronx, and I thought about calling you. And I had already called you 11 times. Her eyes were steady on his. I knew the calls weren't going through. I knew by that point that something was wrong with the connection, that it wasn't just you ignoring me. But I also didn't know what was wrong. And I was sitting on the floor of a shared bathroom with a positive pregnancy test, and I thought, what do I say? How do I explain this to a man who cannot receive my calls? Do I show up at your building? Do I write a letter? You could have come to the building, he said. I know that now. She said it without blame. At the time I thought about what it would look like. An ex-wife showing up at her former husband's building unannounced. The kind of man who works at your front desk. The conversation I would have to have, the explanation. She shook her head. Pride is a stupid thing, Adrian. I know that. But I had already lost almost everything. My pride was what I had left. The room was very quiet. Adrian looked at the woman in front of him and understood in a way he had not allowed himself to understand before exactly what 3 months of that looked like from the inside. Not the facts. The facts he had pieced together from accounts and documents and Reyes's careful reports. The actual experience. The bathroom floor. The shared kitchen. The 2 restaurant shifts. The test. The decision to hold it alone rather than risk one more door closing in her face. I should have found a way to reach you, he said. She looked at him. Yes, she said. You should have. I should have. He stopped. The divorce. The way I handled it. The decision I made without fully discussing it with you. That is separate from what Ferraro did. That belongs to me. She was very still. I made a decision about your life, he said. About what was best for you, without asking you what you actually wanted. I decided that removing myself was protection. I told myself it was sacrifice. He met her eyes. It was arrogance. Sophia looked at him for a long time. Outside, the city moved through its evening noise, the particular energy of New York, at 7 p.m. when the day shift and the night shift overlap and the streets carry twice the usual weight. That's the first time you've said that, she said finally. I know. Not just the first time you've said it to me. The first time, period. I know, he said again. She looked away, back at the window, at the lights. I'm not... She stopped and started again. I'm not ready to tell you it's okay. Because it isn't okay yet. What happened to me, what I went through, that's not something that gets resolved in a hospital corridor. I'm not asking you to resolve it. Good. She turned back to him. Because here's what I am ready to say. I believe you didn't know about the calls. I believe you didn't know about the money. And I believe... A pause. I believe you didn't arrange for all of that to happen as some kind of clean exit strategy. I believe it was done to you as much as it was done to me. It was. Which means, she said carefully, that we were both used, both manipulated, both placed in a situation that was designed to keep us from ever having the conversation we're having right now. He held her gaze. Yes. I hate that, she said. So do I. She breathed out slowly. What happens now with Ferraro? With Voss? He noted that she had already picked up the name Voss. He had mentioned it once briefly in the earlier conversation. She had stored it without comment and pulled it out now with the precision of someone who does not let things slide past them. That too was something he had undervalued. There will be a meeting tomorrow, he said. Internal. The people inside my organization who can be confirmed as untouched by Ferraro's influence. We address it directly. And Ferraro, he will not be a problem after tomorrow. She studied him for a moment. And Voss? Voss is more complicated. He operates through legitimate channels. You can't apply pressure to someone like Voss the way you would apply it to someone inside the organization. He has lawyers and corporations and the very credible appearance of a man who has done nothing wrong. But you have something on him now. He looked at her. You have the financial trail, she said. The account that received my settlement money. If that traces back to Ferraro, and Ferraro traces back to Voss, then you have documentation of Voss directing the theft of a divorce settlement. That's not just a mob problem, that's a federal problem. He was quiet for a moment. You're thinking about this strategically. You told me I was part of it, she said. I'm being part of it. Something shifted in him. Subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. The financial trail is not clean enough yet, he said. 4 layers of shells. We've traced it to an account Ferraro controls, but connecting that to Voss requires another step 1 that takes time. What if Ferraro gave you that step? Adrian looked at her. What if, she said, instead of removing Ferraro outright, you gave him a reason to talk? People like Ferraro didn't build a plan this carefully because they want to die for someone else's strategy. He's ambitious, calculated. If he understood that the protection he expected from Voss was no longer available, if he understood that what was coming for him came from both sides, he'd consider trading. He'd consider trading, she confirmed. The room held that for a moment, and then Adrian smiled. Not the practiced expression he wore in professional settings, not the controlled, deliberate thing he deployed when he needed someone to believe he was pleased. Something older, something she recognized. 4 years married, he said. 4 years, she said. You didn't think any of it stuck. Reyes got the update at 8 p.m. The approach with Ferraro was not to be a confrontation. Not yet. Instead, a message carefully constructed, precisely delivered, that made one thing clear. Everything he had built was now visible. Every layer, every shell, every intercepted call and redirected transfer. And that the person who had given him the order to build it was not going to be there when the accounting came. The message was 8 words. Voss already has a lawyer. Do you? Reyes sent it through a channel Ferraro would know came from Adrian. Then they waited. It took 19 minutes. Ferraro's reply came through a different number, a personal one, not the encrypted channel, which told Adrian everything he needed to know about how frightened the man was. I need terms. Adrian read it, set the phone down, picked it up again, typed 3 words, come in tonight. Ferraro arrived at 10:30 p.m. He came alone, which was either bravery or the absence of anyone left to bring. He looked like a man who had been running calculations for the last 2 hours and had arrived at a number he did not like. He was 51, heavy-shouldered, the kind of man who wore confidence like a coat. Because he had worn it so long, he forgot it was something he had put on. Tonight, the coat was ill-fitting. He sat across from Adrian in a room that contained no one else except Reyes standing near the door. You built this for 8 months, Adrian said. Not a question, not an opening to argue. Ferraro looked at him. I built it because you were going to lose everything, he said. Because you were soft. Because you were making decisions with half your head on her instead of on the business. And the other half of it, Adrian said. The part where you rerouted my ex-wife's settlement money. The part where you let her live in a shared apartment in the Bronx while pregnant. Tell me how that protects the business. Ferraro was quiet. That wasn't part of my original plan, he said finally. Explain that. The financial block was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to create distance, make sure she didn't have resources to stay visible in your orbit. Voss pushed for it to go further. His jaw tightened. He wanted her completely gone from the picture. The extended financial pressure was his addition. And you went along with it. I didn't have much choice at that point. He met Adrian's eyes. By the time I understood the full scope of what Voss wanted, I was already in, already complicit. If I pulled back, I became a liability. So you let a pregnant woman starve. The words fell into the room and did not leave. Ferraro looked at the table. I didn't know she was pregnant, he said. That's the answer you're going with. Silence, Voss, Adrian said. Everything you have, everything that connects him to the financial trail, to the communication intercepts, to the instruction to extend the financial pressure, all of it. Ferraro looked up. And in exchange, you leave the city, Adrian said. Tonight. You don't come back. You don't contact anyone connected to my organization. You don't speak to Voss. You disappear quietly. You're not going to— I'm giving you a door, Adrian said. It's the only one available. What's on the other side of it is your business. But if you do not walk through it, Voss's lawyer will not be the only one whose client is in a very difficult position tomorrow morning. Ferraro sat with that. And then slowly, he reached into his jacket. He placed a phone on the table. Everything is on there, he said. Encrypted, but Reyes can break it. All of it the original communications from Voss. The specific instructions about the financial extension, the calls authorizing the routing intercept. All of it traces to him. Adrian looked at the phone. Then he looked at Ferraro. You have 4 hours, he said. Ferraro stood up. He paused at the door. For whatever it's worth, he said without turning around. I believed I was right about her being a weakness. I don't believe that anymore. Adrian said nothing. The door closed. Reyes picked up the phone from the table and looked at his boss. 4 hours is generous, he said. He gave us Voss, Adrian said. 4 hours is what it cost. At midnight, Adrian went back upstairs. He did not expect Sophia to be awake. She was sitting up in bed with the lamp on. Well, she said. Ferraro is gone, he said. We have everything we need on Voss. She absorbed that. What happens to Voss? He thinks he's still operating from a position of safety, Adrian said. By tomorrow morning, he will understand that the protection he believed he had does not exist. What comes after that? He paused. Voss chose to operate in the legitimate world, which means the legitimate world is what reaches him. She looked at him for a moment. You're going to use the federal angle, among other things. She nodded slowly. Then she said, You know what I keep thinking about? Tell me. That phone call last night, at 10 p.m. She looked at him. I was unconscious. I couldn't have asked anyone to call you, but someone at that clinic looked at my paperwork and found your number and made a decision. Dr. Ortega. Dr. Ortega, she repeated. He said I had asked them not to call you. He called anyway. She paused. I was furious when I woke up and saw you standing there. I thought it was a violation. I know. But if he hadn't— She stopped. If he had respected exactly what I said, I would have woken up in that clinic alone. No resources, no way forward, and you still wouldn't know. Yes. She looked at the window. Sometimes the thing that saves you, she said quietly, is someone deciding that what you said in the worst moment of your life is not the whole truth of what you need. The room held that. Adrian looked at her. At the woman who had survived 6 weeks of being deliberately erased. At the woman who was carrying his child. At the woman who even now in a hospital bed at midnight was thinking clearly and speaking honestly and refusing to be anything less than exactly who she was. He had spent 3 months telling himself she was better off without him. He understood now that what he had actually meant was that he was afraid of how much he needed her. And that the fear had been the worst decision he had ever made. Get some sleep, he said. She looked at him. You too, she said. He almost said, I don't sleep. Instead, he said, I'll try. She watched him go, and in the quiet of her room, with the monitor steady, and the city outside, beginning its slow turn toward morning. Sophia Bennett placed her hand across her stomach and felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in 3 months. Not safety, not resolution, not the clean finished feeling of a problem solved. Something smaller than that. Something real. The beginning of a door that had not yet decided whether it was opening or closing. And for now, for this midnight, that was enough. The phone Ferraro left behind was not locked. That was the first thing Reyes noticed. A man who had spent 8 months building an airtight conspiracy had walked into that room and placed an unlocked phone on the table. Either he was too frightened to think clearly, or he had wanted them to get in quickly. Reyes suspected both were true. By 1 a.m. his technical team had pulled the full contents. By 2 a.m. he had a printed summary on the table in front of Adrian. By 2:30, Adrian had read it twice, and was sitting with the particular stillness of a man who has just confirmed something he suspected but had hoped was wrong. It was worse than 8 months. The documentation on Ferraro's phone showed the first contact from Voss dated 14 months ago, which meant the plan had been in motion for 6 months before Ferraro began his internal campaign to frame Sofia as a strategic liability. Which meant that everything Adrian had believed was Ferraro's independent ambition, his frustration, his unsolicited advice, his persistent framing of Sofia as a weakness had been scripted, seeded, carefully installed into Adrian's inner circle by a man who had never once sat across a table from him. Marcus Elian Voss had never met Adrian Valenti in person. He had simply studied him, had identified the pressure point, had found the right man to apply the right pressure at the right time, and it had worked. Adrian set the summary down. 14 months, he said. 14. Reyes confirmed. He was running this while Sofia and I were still. He stopped. Yes. Adrian was quiet for a long time. Then, what does Voss actually want? Past the isolation strategy, past the manipulation, what is he building toward? Reyes turned to the next page of the summary. Expansion. There are 3 territories in this city that currently operate under your influence that Voss has been positioning to absorb. Not through force, through attrition. The plan appears to be isolate. You destabilize your decision-making. Create enough internal uncertainty that your key people begin looking for more stable alignment. Then offer that stability. He paused. He's done it before, twice, in Boston and in Philadelphia. Both times the target was a man who had a personal vulnerability Voss identified and applied pressure to. What happened to those men? Reyes met his eyes. Boston retired. Philadelphia had a heart attack. A pause. He was 44. The room held that. So Voss doesn't get his hands dirty, Adrian said. He doesn't need to. He applies pressure until the structure collapses from the inside. Then he moves into the space. And right now he believes the structure is collapsing. As of last night, yes. He doesn't know about Ferraro's exit. He doesn't know we have the phone. As far as his intelligence tells him, Ferraro is still in position. You're still isolated, and the pregnancy complication. Reyes stopped. Say it. The pregnancy complication was in Voss's framing an opportunity. His communications to Ferraro describe it as a chance to create additional emotional destabilization. The implication was that a man managing a sick ex-wife and an unplanned pregnancy would be even less focused. Adrian looked at the table. He did not say anything for almost a full minute. When he spoke, his voice was completely level. I want Voss in a room, he said. He's not the kind of man who comes to rooms. Then we create the kind of situation that changes that. He stood up. Not tonight, not tomorrow, but this week. By the end of this week, Marcus Voss is going to understand that everything he built in this city over the last 14 months has just become a liability rather than an asset. How? By making sure that every single person he positioned as a bridge into my organization receives the same message simultaneously. Not a threat, not a warning. Just a fact, the intelligence they provided to Voss is now in our possession. Which makes them either a potential witness or a potential target, depending on what they choose to do with the next 24 hours. Reyes absorbed that. That's a significant move. Voss spent 14 months being patient, Adrian said. I've been patient for about 16 hours. I'm done. He slept for 3 hours. Not in his own bed in the small room down the corridor from Sofia's floor, on a cot that one of the medical staff had brought in without being asked. He did not dream. He woke at 6 a.m. to a message from Reyes that said simply, 7 of the 12 responded. The other 5 went dark. 7 who were willing to negotiate. 5 who had gone to Voss. Which meant Voss knew something was wrong. Adrian was dressed and on the phone within 4 minutes. The morning moved quickly after that. Calls. Decisions. Reyes coordinating the movement of information and people with the efficiency that 15 years of working together had built into something almost wordless. Adrian would start a sentence, and Reyes would finish the operational shape of it before the words fully landed. By 8 a.m., the 7 who had responded were in process. The 5 who had gone dark were being watched. And a very specific message was making its way through channels that would eventually reach Marcus Voss's desk. The message was not aggressive. That was the choice that mattered. Adrian knew had learned over 20 years of operating in rooms where the wrong tone cost more than the wrong decision. That aggression told a man how frightened you were. Precision told him how prepared you were. The message was 3 sentences. The phone exists. The 14 months exist. The choice is yours. At 9 a.m., he went upstairs. Sophia was already awake, already dressed, sitting on the edge of her bed with Kara beside her. Kara was a small woman, early 40s. Dark-haired, the kind of person who communicated loyalty through the specific angle of her body, she was turned toward Sophia at a slight angle that put her physically between Sophia and the door. She looked at Adrian when he came in with an expression that was not quite hostile, but was definitely appraising. "Mr. Valenti," she said. "Kara," he said. "Sophia told me what happened." She held his gaze. "All of it." "Good." She seemed to have expected a different response to that. She blinked slightly. "I've known Sophia for 9 years," she said. "When she disappeared after the divorce, I called her every day. She answered maybe half the time. She told me she was fine. She told me she was managing." Her voice tightened. "She looked like she was dying when I saw her last night, and she had told me 2 days before that she was fine." "Kara." Sophia's voice was quiet. "I'm saying it," Kara said. "I'm saying it because someone needs to." She looked at Adrian. "She protected your privacy, even when protecting your privacy meant I didn't know she needed help. So whatever you're planning to do about the people who put her in that position, I hope it's significant." "It will be," Adrian said. Kara looked at him for another moment. Then she sat back. "Okay," she said. Sophia looked at Adrian over Kara's shoulder with an expression that was somewhere between exasperation and gratitude. The look of someone who has a friend who says every true thing out loud and has learned to navigate the aftermath. "How are you feeling?" he asked her. "Better," she said. "The doctor came in at 7. The baby is measuring well. They want to keep me 1 more night for observation, and then—" She paused. "Then we need to talk about what's next." "We will. Not in a corridor," she said. "Not in a hospital room. Somewhere that isn't—" She gestured around her. "This. Name it." She thought for a moment. "There's a diner on 44th. We used to go there on Sunday mornings, before everything." He remembered it. "I'll make sure you can get there safely," he said. She looked at him. "I wasn't asking for an escort," she said. "I was asking if you'd meet me there." The distinction was not small. I understood what she was doing, setting a table where they were 2 people, rather than a man with a security apparatus and a woman under his protection. A place where the conversation had to happen on equal ground. "Sunday morning," he said. "Sunday morning," she confirmed. He was back downstairs by 9:30. What he found waiting for him was not what he expected. Reyes was standing in the corridor outside the office with an expression that Adrian had learned to read over 15 years, the particular compression around his eyes that meant the information was significant and the delivery needed to be careful. "Voss responded," Reyes said. "Already. He moved faster than we anticipated." He handed Adrian his phone. "He didn't send a message through a channel. He sent a person." "Who?" "A woman named Sandra Okafor, attorney. She arrived at the building 40 minutes ago. She's been waiting in the lobby. She says she represents a client who wishes to open a dialogue regarding certain documents that have recently come to light." Adrian read that twice. "He's not coming in himself." "No, but he sent someone with authorization to negotiate, which means he's frightened." Adrian handed the phone back. "Let her wait 20 more minutes, then bring her up." Sandra Okafor was exactly what her title suggested. Precise, composed, expensive. She wore a charcoal suit and carried a leather portfolio, and she sat down across from Adrian with the practiced ease of someone who had spent years in rooms where the tension was kept off the table through professional courtesy. She was good at her job. That was the first thing he noticed. The second thing he noticed was that she was doing the same assessment of him that he was doing of her, and that she was not pretending otherwise. My client, she said, would like to discuss a resolution. To what specifically? Adrian said. To a situation that my client believes has become unnecessarily complicated for all parties. Your client created the complication. She held his gaze without flinching. My client acknowledges that certain decisions were made that may have had unintended consequences for a third party. He would like to address those consequences directly. The third party, Adrian said, was my pregnant ex-wife. She was left without financial resources for 3 months. She was in a hospital 2 nights ago from malnutrition. Your client's decisions were not complicated. They were targeted. Sandra Okafor's composure did not break. But something shifted behind it, a slight recalibration, the kind that happens when a well-prepared person encounters a fact they were not fully briefed on. She had not known about the hospital, which meant Voss had not told her, which meant Voss was managing information even within his own representation. My client is prepared to make significant financial restitution, she said after a moment. Substantially above the original settlement amount. He is also prepared to— I don't want his money, Adrian said. She stopped. I want 3 things, he said. First, every communication between your client and Dominic Ferraro dating back 14 months formally disclosed. Not to me. To the appropriate federal authority. He let that land. Second, your client's withdrawal from any interest, direct or indirect, in the 3 territories he has been positioning to absorb. Documented, signed, and filed within 72 hours. Third, he paused. Third is personal. Your client will not respond with personal communication to this office. What I mean by personal is this: he will not make contact with Sophia Bennett. He will not make contact with anyone connected to her. He will behave as though she does not exist, because from this point forward, she is the person in this situation least available to him. Sandra Okafor was quiet. My client may find those terms non-negotiable, Adrian said. Those are not opening positions. Those are the terms. She looked at him. And if my client declines, then the phone that Ferraro left on my table last night gets to the federal prosecutor's office by noon today, rather than at a time of my choosing. He held her gaze. Your client is a strategic man. He'll understand the difference between handing something over on your own terms and having it taken. She closed her portfolio. I'll convey the message, she said. I know you will. She stood. Mr. Valenti. She paused at the door, a small hesitation that was not professional, that came from somewhere underneath the suit and the prepared language. For what it's worth, and I recognize this exceeds the scope of my role here, the hospital, I didn't know. No, he said. You didn't. She left. Reyes, who had been standing near the far wall throughout, looked at Adrian. She'll call him from her car, he said. I know. He'll need 30 minutes to decide. I know that too. And if he declines, he won't. Adrian stood up. Men like Voss don't build what he's built by dying on hills. He'll assess the terms, he'll find 3 things in them that he can frame as victories, and he'll accept. Because the alternative is exposure, and Voss has spent 14 months being invisible. He straightened his jacket. Invisible men are very afraid of light. He went back upstairs. He needed to tell Sophia. Not all of it, not the operational details, not the full picture of what Voss represented, but the part that belonged to her. The part she had earned the right to know. She was alone when he came in. Kara had gone to get coffee from the floor below, and Sophia was standing at her window again. She seemed drawn to windows. He had noticed the way people who have spent time in small spaces are drawn to any view that extends beyond a wall. She heard him come in and turned. You have the other face now, she said. He almost smiled. Which one is that? The one that means something is finished. He sat in the chair. She stayed at the window. Voss sent an attorney this morning, he said. She blinked. Already? He moved faster than I expected. It means the message landed harder than he was prepared for. He leaned forward. He's looking for terms. What terms did you offer? He told her. She listened, the way she always listened, completely without interruption, turning it over carefully. When he reached the 3rd condition, that Voss would never make contact with her, would behave as though she did not exist. Something moved across her face. You made me the third condition, she said. Yes. Not money, not territory. Me. The territories and the financial disclosure protect the business. You are not the business. His voice was steady. You are the reason none of this is acceptable. Making you the third condition is the only way to make him understand that the two things are not interchangeable. She looked at him. Adrian, she said. Yes. That's the most... She stopped. Looked at the window. When she turned back, her eyes were bright and she was visibly refusing to let that become something else. Okay, she said. Okay. He understood that wasn't a small word from her. Will he accept? She asked. Yes. How do you know? Because the alternative is everything he's built becoming visible, and visibility is the one thing Voss cannot survive. She nodded. Then she said, I want to understand something. This whole plan, the 14 months, the isolation strategy Ferraro, the financial manipulation, Voss never met you. He built all of this from a distance. Yes. Which means he was studying you, she said. He understood your organization well enough to find Ferraro to identify me as a pressure point to time everything around the divorce proceedings. He knew a lot about you. He did. But he got one thing wrong, she said. He waited. He studied the version of you that made the divorce decision, she said. The version that believed protecting me meant keeping me separate. The version that was afraid of what needing someone looked like. He built his whole strategy around that man. She looked at him. And that man doesn't appear to be here anymore. The room was very quiet. I'm still working on that, he said honestly. I know. She said it without softness and without cruelty, just accurately. But you're working on it, which is more than 14 months ago. Voss's attorney called back at 11:15 a.m. He accepted all three terms. Reyes delivered the news with the same composure. He delivered everything, and Adrian received it with the same composure in return. No celebration. No visible relief. In the world they operated in, accepting terms was not a victory. It was the beginning of the monitoring process, the start of verifying that what someone agreed to in a lawyer's phone call actually became true in practice. But it was also undeniably a shift. The structure Voss had spent 14 months building, the patient invisible architecture of isolation and pressure, was now dismantled. Not through force, not through the kind of confrontation that left evidence and exposure. Through information and precision and the careful application of the one thing Voss had never expected: Adrian to have someone beside him who was thinking clearly when he was not. Adrian thought about that. About the Sunday morning conversation Sophia had had with him in the hospital corridor. The one where she laid out the Ferraro leverage strategy in about 90 seconds. About the way she had immediately identified that the financial trail was a federal issue. About the clarity she had brought to a situation that without her, he would have resolved through force alone. Force would have worked. It would also have left exposure, escalation, the kind of aftermath that required years of management. Her approach left nothing to manage. He sat with that for a while. At 1 p.m. Kara came back with not just coffee, but an entire paper bag of things she had evidently decided Sophia needed: fruit, a specific brand of crackers she mentioned. Sophia had always eaten when stressed, and a newspaper, because as Kara explained to anyone who would listen, she actually reads the physical paper. I don't know why, she just does. Sophia took the paper with an expression of genuine gratitude, and Kara sat beside her on the bed, and they talked with the ease of 9 years of friendship, quietly overlapping the kind of conversation that doesn't require full sentences, because the history fills in the gaps. Adrian stood near the doorway for a moment, not entering, just present. Sophia looked up and saw him. She tilted her head slightly. An invitation. He came in and sat in the chair and said almost nothing for the next 40 minutes. He listened to the two of them talk about Kara's daughter, who was 7, and had apparently decided she wanted to be a marine biologist, about a restaurant on the Upper East Side that Sophia had been to once, and wanted to go back to, about something completely unremarkable that had happened on Kara's street last Tuesday. Nothing about Voss. Nothing about Ferraro. Nothing about the last 3 months. Just two women who had known each other for 9 years, talking about ordinary things in the middle of an extraordinary week. It was the most peaceful 40 minutes Adrian Valenti had spent in a year. He did not say that out loud, but he noticed it. At 3 p.m. the doctor came in for the afternoon check. Dr. Ortega, who had made the judgment call at 10 p.m. 2 nights ago, that had changed everything, moved through his examination with the same composed professionalism he had shown from the first phone call. He checked the monitors, reviewed the morning's test results, spoke to Sophia in the direct but gentle way that she clearly appreciated. "Everything is looking significantly better," he said. "Blood pressure is normalized. Blood sugar stable. The baby's heart rate has been consistent and strong throughout." He looked at the tablet in his hand. "I'd like to see you through one more night. If tomorrow morning's numbers are what I expect, you can go home." "Good," Sophia said. He looked at Adrian. "She needs to eat consistently," he said. "Not just today, not just this week. The nutritional deficit from the last several weeks means her body is working harder than it should to sustain the pregnancy. Regular meals. Adequate hydration, no skipped anything. This is not optional." "Understood," Adrian said. Dr. Ortega looked between them. Then he said, with the careful neutrality of a man who understood exactly what room he was in, and chose his words accordingly. "Whatever arrangement you work out between yourselves, that's your business. My business is making sure my patient and her baby are not in a clinical setting in another 6 weeks." He closed the tablet. "So make sure she eats." After he left, Kara looked at Sophia. "I like him," she said. "He called Adrian without my permission," Sophia said. "I know," Kara said. "I like him." Sophia looked at the ceiling. Adrian, despite everything, almost smiled. The afternoon brought something he had not anticipated. At 4 p.m. his phone rang. Not Reyes, not the legal team, not any of the numbers connected to the morning's operational work. It was his mother. Juliana Valenti was 73 years old and had lived in the same house in Brooklyn for 41 years. And she knew things about her son's life, the way people know things. They were never directly told through the specific texture of his silences, through what he did not say, when she called, through the particular way he answered the phone when he was managing something. "You sound like your father did," she said, when he was carrying something he didn't know how to put down. "Mama, don't mama me in that tone. I've been calling you for 2 days. You answered twice." A pause. "Reyes called me." Adrian went still. "He called you. He said you were at the facility. He said there was a medical situation." Her voice register still controlled, but underneath the control was the particular frequency of a 73-year-old woman who had buried a husband and raised a son in a world that required her to be stronger than she looked. He said Sophia was there. Adrian sat down. "She's okay," he said. "She's stable. The baby is." "The baby." His mother's voice was very quiet. "The baby." "Yes." A long pause. "How far along?" 4 months. Another pause. "And she was alone," his mother said. It was not a question. "Yes." "For how long?" "Since the divorce." The silence that followed was the particular silence of a woman deciding which of the many true things she wanted to say first, and concluding that none of them would help. "I want to see her," she said finally. "Mama. I know it's complicated. I know what the last 3 months have been. I know you've both been through something that didn't have to happen." Her voice was steady. "I don't want to add to the complicated. I want to bring her something to eat, from the house, not hospital food." A pause. "She always liked my braciole." Adrian looked at the ceiling. "I'll ask her," he said. "You tell her," his mother said. "You tell her Juliana is asking if she can come." He did not tell her right away. He sat with it for 20 minutes, working through the geometry of it, whether it was too much, whether Sophia needed the space, whether introducing his mother into a situation that was already at capacity for emotional complexity was a decision that served Sophia or himself. He concluded honestly that it might serve both. He went upstairs at 4:30. Sophia was alone. Kara had gone to pick up her daughter from school. She was reading the newspaper, actually reading it, her glasses on the paper open across her lap. She looked up. "What now?" she said. My mother wants to come. Sophia did not respond immediately. She set the newspaper down. She took her glasses off. Your mother, she said. She heard. She wants to bring you food from the house. Braciole. He held her gaze. I told her I'd ask. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. Why is she asking? She said. Does she think this is... She paused. Does she think we're back together? No, he said. I think she wants to feed someone who hasn't been eating. Sophia looked at the window. I always liked Juliana, she said finally. I know. She called me twice after the divorce. Did you know that? He didn't. She didn't say anything about you. She just called, asked how I was, told me about her garden. Sophia's voice was softer than it had been. I thought about calling her back. I didn't. Why not? Because she was your mother. She looked at him. And I didn't know how to separate the two things. He nodded. Tell her she can come, Sophia said. Tell her the braciole would be... She stopped. Looked down at her hands. Tell her I missed it. He pulled out his phone and called his mother back. When she answered before he could say anything, she said, Well, she says yes, he said. And she says she missed the braciole. His mother was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll be there at 6. She hung up. Juliana arrived at 6 exactly, which was how she arrived everywhere, not a minute early, not a minute late, carrying a covered dish and a paper bag, and the kind of composed energy that had characterized her entire adult life. She came into Sophia's room and stopped. She looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at her. And then Juliana put down the dish and the bag and crossed the room and put her arms around Sophia with a directness and completeness that did not ask permission and did not require explanation. Sophia went very still, and then she leaned into it. Adrian stood in the doorway and watched his 73-year-old mother hold his ex-wife in a hospital room and felt something happen in his chest that he did not have clean language for. After a moment, Juliana pulled back and looked at Sophia's face with the frank assessing gaze of someone who has spent a lifetime understanding what people look like when they've been through something. You're too thin, she said. I know, Sophia said. You have good color today, though. She touched Sophia's face briefly. Better than Reyes described. Sophia blinked. Reyes described my color. Reyes tells me things when my son doesn't. She turned and looked at Adrian in the doorway. Sit down, she told him. You look like you're about to fall over. He sat down. She opened the covered dish. The smell that came out of it was immediate and warm, and completely at odds with the antiseptic precision of the facility, the smell of garlic and tomatoes, and something slow-cooked and real. Sophia closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Juliana, she said, don't thank me yet. Eat first. They ate together, the three of them, in a hospital room at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. Juliana talked about her garden, the tomatoes that had come in early this year, the basil that had gotten too much rain. She talked about a neighbor's dog that kept getting through the fence. She talked about a television show she had started watching that she described as complete nonsense, but I can't stop. She did not talk about the divorce. She did not talk about Ferraro or Voss or the last 3 months. She did not ask what Adrian planned to do, or what Sophia planned to do, or what the two of them together planned to do. She ate, and she talked, and she refilled Sophia's plate without asking. And when Sophia laughed, actually laughed at something about the neighbor's dog and a specific incident involving a garden hose. Juliana looked at her son across the table with an expression that said everything she was not going to say out loud. He looked back at his mother, and he understood. I understood what she had come to do, and it was not about the food. It was about making the room feel like something other than a crisis. It was about sitting across from Sophia and treating her like someone who was still in the world, still connected, still part of something that extended beyond the walls of the last 3 months. His mother had always understood things he was still learning. At 8 p.m., Juliana stood up and began packing the dishes. She moved with the efficiency of someone who has been running a household for 50 years and does not waste motion. When she was done, She stood at the side of Sophia's bed and held her hand for a moment. "You call me," she said. "Not just through him, directly." She pulled a card from her jacket, an actual physical card with her personal number on it, handwritten. "Whenever you want." Sophia took the card. "Juliana," she said. "I know," his mother said simply. She turned to Adrian. She looked at him with the particular look that mothers reserve for the moments when words would cost more than their worth, when what needs to be said has already been said 100 different ways, and the only thing left is the look itself. He held it. She patted his face once the way she had been doing it since he was 7 years old and walked out. The room was quiet. Sophia was looking at the card in her hand. "She wrote her number in green ink," she said. "She has a thing about green ink." "I know." A pause. "I forgot." Another pause. "I forgot a lot of things." He said nothing. He let that sit. "The Sunday morning diner," she said without looking up from the card. "I need you to understand something before we get there. Tell me." "I'm not going there to decide whether to get back together," she said. "I'm going there because we need to talk, really talk about what this is, about the baby, about what co-parenting looks like when we live in completely different versions of the world." She raised her eyes. "And about whether there is any version of this where I trust you again. I don't know the answer to that yet." "I know, but I'm willing to find out what the answer is." She held his gaze. "That's not a small thing." "I know it isn't," he said. "Do you?" He thought about it. "Honestly, I know I've been the person who made assumptions about what you needed without asking you," he said. "I know that a diner on 44th with coffee and no agenda is not my natural language. I know—" He stopped, started again. "I know that what you're offering me is more than I arranged for in the divorce, and I know I don't deserve it." She looked at him. "You're right," she said. "You don't." He nodded. "But the baby does," she said quietly. "The baby deserves two people who tried, who actually tried." She placed her hand across her stomach. "So, Sunday." "Sunday," he said. She slept at 9 p.m., finally the deep sleep of someone whose body had been running on a debt it could not sustain, and was now with food and safety, and the specific relief of a day that had moved things forward, beginning to collect. Adrian sat in the corridor for a while. He sat with his acceptance. Reyes and the phone, and the 14 months. His mother, and the braciole, and green ink. Sophia's face when Juliana held her. He sat with the question he had not said aloud, the one that had been running underneath everything since 10 p.m. 2 nights ago, when a doctor called his private line and said a name he thought he had finished hearing. Whether what Sophia was offering the willingness to find out was something he was capable of meeting. He had spent his whole adult life in a world that rewarded people for being unmovable, for maintaining control in situations designed to destabilize, for making decisions fast and carrying them without second-guessing. Sophia was asking him to be a different kind of strong, the kind that admits damage, that sits still in a hospital corridor and doesn't manage the silence, that shows up to a Sunday morning diner without an agenda and without knowing how the conversation ends. He was not sure he knew how to do that, but he was sure sitting in the corridor at 9 p.m. on a Wednesday that he was going to try. Not because he had calculated the outcome, because she was the only person who had ever sat across from him and told him the full truth of what she saw, and he was done walking away from that. Sophia left the facility on Thursday morning. She walked out under her own power, which mattered to her in a way she did not explain, but Adrian understood completely. She carried her own bag. She held her own coat. She thanked Dr. Ortega at the door with a firmness that was also gratitude, the kind that comes from someone who does not give it easily and means it completely when they do. Dr. Ortega shook her hand and said, "Eat, sleep. Come back in 2 weeks." "I will," she said. He looked at Adrian over her shoulder with the expression of a man who had seen enough of the world to know when a situation was more complicated than it appeared, and who had decided, as he had decided at 10 p.m. on a Tuesday, that the complication was worth navigating. "Keep her schedule," he said. "I will," Adrian said. They stood on the sidewalk outside the facility in the early morning cold. and for a moment, neither of them said anything. The city moved around them the way it always did, indifferent, continuous, full of its own business. Cabs and delivery trucks and people with coffee and earbuds, and nowhere to be for anyone but themselves. "I'm going back to Kara's," Sophia said. "I know. She has the second bedroom, and she already cleared it out." She adjusted her bag on her shoulder. "It's a good situation. Temporary, but good." "How temporary?" She looked at him. "I don't know yet," she said. "I need to figure out what I'm doing. Not what we're doing, what I'm doing. Work finances the apartment situation. The things I was trying to figure out before." She stopped. "Before all of this." "I can help with the finances," he said. "I know you can." Her voice was even. "And I'll tell you if I need that. But right now, I need to know I can manage my own life, Adrian, without your infrastructure holding it up." He held her gaze. "Sunday," he said. "Sunday," she confirmed. A car pulled up Kara right on time with the window down and the particular expression of someone who has been waiting around the corner for exactly the right moment. "Hey," Kara said. "Hey," Sophia said. She opened the door, paused, turned back to Adrian. "Thank you," she said. "For the hospital. For the medical team. For—" She stopped, and something moved through her expression that she did not fully conceal. "For the braciole." He almost smiled. "That was my mother." "I know whose braciole it was." She held his eyes for one more second. "Sunday." She got in the car. He stood on the sidewalk and watched them pull into traffic. Kara's car turned the corner and disappeared, and Adrian Valenti stood in the New York morning with his hands in his coat pockets and let himself feel the particular weight of someone leaving in a direction that was this time not permanent. That was different. He held on to that difference. Friday moved fast. The documentation from Ferraro's phone had been cleaned and organized by Reyes's technical team and delivered in a format that Adrian's attorney described with visible satisfaction as prosecutor ready. The chain connecting Voss to the financial rerouting was clean. The communications authorizing the extension of Sophia's financial pressure, the specific instruction to ensure she remained without resources, were time-stamped, authenticated, and damning. Sandra Okafor called at 10 a.m. "My client is prepared to execute the terms," she said. All three. A pause. "He would like to request a 60-day window on the territory documentation." "He has 36 hours, Adrian said. "The same window I gave him on everything else." Another pause. "Understood. Ms. Okafor." He stopped her before she could close the call. "Your client is a strategic man. He'll look for angles. He'll tell himself the 36 hours is an opportunity." He kept his voice level. "Make sure he understands that every hour after the deadline doubles what ends up in the federal file. That's not a threat. It's a timeline." She was quiet for a moment. "I'll convey that," she said. "Good." He ended the call. Reyes, sitting across from him, raised an eyebrow. "He'll test the 36 hours, he said. "Yes," Adrian said. "What do we do when he does?" "We wait 37 hours, and then we make one phone call." He picked up his coffee. "He'll execute by hour 38. Reyes looked at him for a moment with the expression he occasionally deployed, the one that meant, "I have been working for this man for 15 years, and I still occasionally find him surprising." "The 7 who cooperated," Adrian said. "Where do we stand?" "All 7 have provided formal statements. 2 have requested ongoing protection in exchange. 1 has left the city independently." Reyes checked his notes. "The other 4 are in various states of demonstrating loyalty through action." "And the 5 who went dark?" 3 have resurfaced. 2 are still—" He paused. "Unavailable." "Find them?" "Working on it. Not because I'm concerned about what they know," Adrian said. "Because I want to know who they ran to and whether Voss has a secondary structure we haven't identified." "You think there's a secondary structure?" "I think Voss has been doing this for longer than 14 months and in more cities than Boston and Philadelphia." He set down the coffee. "I think we addressed the branch. I want to understand the root." Reyes wrote something down. "That's a longer investigation," he said. "I know. Start it anyway. Saturday arrived with the particular quality of a day that is not yet what it's building toward. Adrian worked in the morning calls paperwork, the administrative weight of running something as large and complex as what he ran, which did not pause because his personal life had fractured and reassembled itself in the space of a week. There were meetings and decisions and the kind of judgment calls that required his attention specifically that could not be delegated. He worked through lunch. At 2 p.m. his phone rang. Private line. A number he recognized. Sophia. He answered on the second ring. Hi, she said. Just that. Hi. The ordinary word of someone testing whether ordinary was available. Hi, he said. I just wanted to... A pause. The doctor's office called. They've received the records from the facility, and they want to schedule a prenatal appointment. They asked if there was a... She stopped. They asked about a partner attending. He was quiet. You don't have to, she said. It's not a, I'm not asking. I'm just telling you they asked and I didn't know how to answer and I thought, I want to be there, he said. A pause. Okay, she said. Text me the appointment. It's next Thursday. I'll be there. Another pause, slightly longer. How are you? She said. Not formally, just the question. He considered giving the managed answer. The one that said fine, moving forward, handling everything. He had that answer ready, the way he had most answers ready, pre-assembled, professionally delivered. He did not give it. Tired, he said. And, he stopped. Better than Wednesday, but tired. Yeah, she said. Me too. A quiet beat. Sunday, she said. Sunday, he said. She ended the call. He sat with his phone in his hand for a moment. Outside, the city was doing its Saturday afternoon thing slower than a weekday, louder in different ways. He sat in that and thought about the word tired, and whether it was the first honest, single-word answer he had given to that question in longer than he could clearly track. It probably was. Sunday morning. The diner on 44th was exactly what it had always been, a booth near the window, coffee in white ceramic mugs. A laminated menu that had not changed in years, and the specific noise of a New York diner on a Sunday morning, which was different from every other noise the city made. Warmer, more human, the sound of people who had nowhere urgent to be. Sophia was already there when he arrived. He saw her through the window before he came in, sitting in their old booth, her coat on the hook beside her, both hands wrapped around her coffee mug, looking at the street outside with the expression of someone who has been thinking for a while and has arrived somewhere they needed to reach. He came in. She looked up. He sat down across from her. No preamble, no greeting ceremony. They had been married for 4 years. They knew each other well enough to skip the formalities. Coffee's good, she said. It always was. A waitress came and poured his cup. He thanked her, and she left. They were quiet for a moment, not uncomfortably. The quiet of two people who have too many things to say and are each deciding where to begin. Sophia went first. I've been thinking about what you said at the facility, she said. About arrogance. About the divorce being a decision you made about my life without asking me. I meant it, he said. I know you did. She wrapped her hands around her mug again. I've also been thinking about my part in it. He did not interrupt. I knew, she said, that you were pulling away. I knew months before the divorce that you were building distance, that you were keeping me separate from the parts of your life that felt dangerous. I could feel it happening. She looked at her coffee. And I didn't say anything. I waited for you to say it. I told myself I was giving you space, but really, a pause. Really, I was afraid that if I pushed, you'd decide the distance was easier than the conversation. You were probably right, he said. That's the part I keep sitting with. She raised her eyes. We were both so afraid of the same thing that we ended up creating it. He looked at her across the booth. At the woman he had decided with complete certainty, and the best of intentions, was better off without him. At the woman who had survived 3 months of being systematically erased without losing her clarity, her precision, or the particular directness that had always made her the most honest person in any room she entered. I want to say something, he said. Go ahead. I don't want to manage this, he said. I don't want to manage you or manage what we are, or decide from a position of protective authority what the right structure for this looks like. I've done that. I know what it costs. He held her gaze. I want to actually talk to you about the baby, about what you need, about what I'm capable of and where I'm going to need to work to get better. He paused. I want to have the conversation, not the outcome, the actual conversation. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. That, she said quietly, is the first thing you've said to me in 4 years that didn't have a conclusion already built into it. I noticed that about myself recently. Recently, she repeated with a dryness that was also barely affectionate. This week, he said, more specifically. She almost smiled. Okay, she said. Let's talk. They talked for 2 hours. Really talked the kind of conversation that does not have an agenda and does not perform itself. They talked about the baby. About what Sophia wanted her life to look like. She wanted to work again. She had been thinking about going back to the interior design work she had set aside when they married. She had ideas she had been sitting on for 3 years, and she was ready to build something of her own. She said it clearly and without apology, and he listened without offering to fund it or structure it or make it easier in any way she had not asked. They talked about what co-parenting looked like when one parent ran a criminal organization. She said it exactly like that, criminal organization, without softening the language. He did not flinch from it. I want our child to know who you are, she said. The full version, not a sanitized version, not a story we've constructed to make it manageable. I want them to understand your world as they grow up on age-appropriate terms, because the alternative is they find out differently and they feel deceived. Agreed, he said. She blinked slightly. She had prepared for that to be harder. I also want them to know, she said, that there is a version of strength that doesn't require controlling everything. That the strongest thing I've seen you do this week was admit you were wrong. She looked at him directly. I want our child to see that version of you, not just the version that controls rooms. I want that too, he said. I'm still learning it. I know. A pause. I'm willing to learn alongside. He was quiet for a moment. Is that? He stopped, started again. What does alongside mean for you, specifically? She looked at him. It means I'm not moving back in, she said. Not now, maybe not for a long time. What I went through in the last 3 months is not something that resolves in a week, regardless of how much I understand why it happened. She was direct and clear and without cruelty. It means I'm willing to rebuild trust incrementally, which means you show up to the prenatal appointment, which means when I call you answer, which means when I tell you what I need, you don't override it with what you think I need. She held his gaze. It means you treat me like a partner in this child's life, not a protected asset. Yes, he said. And it means... She paused. Something moved through her expression that was more vulnerable than the rest. It means that the question of what else this could be between us, that question stays open. I'm not closing it. But I'm not answering it today either. He held her gaze. Okay, he said. She looked at him. You keep saying okay, she said. Like you actually mean it. I do actually mean it. She studied him for another moment. Then okay, she said. They were on their second coffee when his phone vibrated. He looked at it, Reyes, and looked up at Sophia. Go, she said. I know what that face means. I don't have to. Adrian. She said his name the way she had always said it when she was being patient with him about something he already knew. Go. I'll finish my coffee. I'll take a cab home. I have Kara's number, and your mother's number, and Dr. Ortega's number. She held up her phone. I am not without resources. He paused. I'll call you tonight, he said. I know you will. She wrapped both hands around her mug again. Go handle it. He left cash on the table more than enough, and she did not argue about it, which he took as progress. He was out the door and on the phone with Reyes inside 30 seconds. Talk to me, he said. Voss executed the territory documentation, Reyes said. 34 hours, 2 hours early. Good. That's not why I'm calling. A pause with weight in it. The two people who went dark, we found them. Where? One is in federal protective custody. Reyes's voice was careful. He went to the FBI, voluntarily. He's offering a full account of Voss's operation in exchange for immunity. Adrian processed that. Which means Voss is already in the federal lens, he said. As of this morning, yes. The prosecutor's office has opened a preliminary inquiry. Another pause. Adrian. The person who went to them, he didn't just give them Voss. He gave them a full account of Voss's 14-month operation, including the financial manipulation, including Sophia. He stopped walking. Her name is in a federal case file, he said. Yes, as a victim of financial fraud, which technically and legally she is. Reyes's voice remained careful. The prosecutor's office may want to speak with her. Adrian stood on the sidewalk outside the diner. Through the window he could see Sophia still sitting in their booth, both hands around her mug, looking at the street. The ordinary Sunday morning posture of a woman who had just had a 2-hour conversation that moved something forward. She did not know yet. How long before they contact her directly, he said. Days, maybe less. Once a preliminary inquiry is open, they move. I need to tell her before they call. Yes, Reyes said. You do. He ended the call. He stood outside for one moment. Then he went back inside. Sophia looked up when he came back through the door. She read his face in about 2 seconds, the face that meant not operational, not Reyes with a problem, something else. Sit down, she said. He sat down. He told her. All of it. The federal protective custody. The voluntary account. Her name in the file. She listened with both hands around her mug, very still, her eyes on his face. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. So I'm a victim in a federal case, she said. Technically, yes. They'll want a statement. Probably. She absorbed that. Is that... He watched her face. Is that something you're willing to do? She looked at him. Someone went to the FBI voluntarily, she said. Someone inside whatever Voss built decided the risk of coming forward was worth it. She set down her mug. And I'm supposed to decide I don't want to participate because it's complicated. I'm not asking you to decide anything, he said. I'm telling you so, you're not caught off guard when they call. She studied him. You came back in, she said. You could have handled this without telling me until later. Tonight. Tomorrow. Yes, he said. But you came back in. Yes. She held his gaze. Okay, she said quietly. When they call, I'll talk to them. You should have a lawyer, your own, not mine. I know. She nodded slowly. Kara's brother-in-law is a federal attorney. I'll call her. Good. She looked at the table for a moment. Then, it's actually... She stopped. What? It's actually clarifying, she said. Knowing that what happened to me is that it has a formal name, financial fraud. That it's not just something that happened in the gray area of a complicated divorce. She looked up. It happened. It was deliberate. And now there's a process for that. Yes, he said. That's something I didn't have 3 months ago, she said. A process. A name for it. She paused. It doesn't fix the 3 months. But it's not nothing. He looked at her. The woman across the diner booth. The mother of his child. The person who had just been told her name was in a federal case file and had responded by asking whether someone else's courage in coming forward deserved to be matched with her own. He had spent 4 years married to her and somehow managed to convince himself she was a vulnerability. He understood now what that said about him. Not about her. They parted on the sidewalk outside at noon. Kara was picking her up. Sophia had texted her while they settled the check. They stood in the Sunday light, and there was a moment, just a moment, where the geometry of goodbye felt different from how it had felt on every other occasion. Not final, not managed, just a pause between two people who had agreed to keep talking. Thursday, he said. Prenatal appointment, 10 a.m. She had already sent him the details. Don't be late. I won't be. She looked at him. Adrian. She said his name with the weight she gave it when she meant all of it. Not just the sound, but everything attached to the sound. Thank you for coming back inside. He held her gaze. I'm not going anywhere, he said. She nodded once. Kara's car appeared at the curb. She got in. Kara looked at Adrian through the window with an expression that had shifted slightly from earlier in the week, still watchful, still protective, but with something added to it. Something like cautious allowance. He gave her a small nod. She gave him one back. The car pulled away. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment. Then he called Reyes. I need to set up a meeting, he said. Not the inner circle, the full organization, everyone. Reyes was quiet for a beat. That's a significant step, he said. I know. The full organization hasn't been assembled since your father's time. I know that too. What do you want to say to them? Adrian thought about it. I want to say what's true, he said. That the last 14 months had a leak. That the leak has been addressed. That anyone who had contact with Ferraro or Voss's network during that period has 36 hours to come to me directly before I come to them. He paused. And I want them to see that I'm not doing this from a position of panic. I'm doing it from a position of clarity. And the personal situation? Reyes asked carefully. The personal situation is mine, Adrian said. It's not on the table. But what I will say to them is this. The belief that my family was a weakness drove the last 14 months of crisis. I want it understood clearly, in a room with everyone present, that what is mine is protected. Not because it makes me soft, because the alternative is working for a man who treats the people closest to him as disposable. And that is not the kind of organization I run. Reyes was quiet for a moment. That will land hard on some of them, he said. Good, Adrian said. Set the meeting. The meeting was Tuesday evening. 41 people in a room that had not held all of them at once in 11 years. The room itself was familiar. The long table. The particular quality of the silence. When that many people are waiting for someone to speak the weight of collective attention that Adrian had grown up learning to carry and had never entirely gotten comfortable with, he did not sit at the head of the table. He stood. That was the first thing they noticed. 3 months ago, he said, I made a decision I was told was strategic. I was told it reduced exposure. I was told it was the right move for the long-term stability of this organization. He looked around the table. I ended my marriage, and I told myself it was the sacrifice a man in my position had to make. No one moved. What I did not know was that the advice I was receiving was not mine. It came from a man who had been placed inside this organization by a competitor who spent 14 months studying how to take what we've built. He let that land. Dominic Ferraro. 14 months of coordinated manipulation. A financial operation that targeted my ex-wife. A communication intercept designed to ensure she could not reach me. All of it executed from inside this table. The room was completely silent. I am telling you this directly, he said, because what happened cannot be repaired by pretending it didn't. Because every person in this room deserves to know that a breach occurred, that it has been addressed, and that the full accounting of who was involved is documented and in the appropriate hands. He paused. If you had contact with Ferraro regarding anything outside your normal operational role, I expect to hear about it. Not because I am conducting a purge, because I am determining the actual edges of what happened, and I need complete information to do that. He looked around the room. One more thing, he said. The quality of the silence shifted slightly. They could hear what was coming in the way he held himself before it. The strategy that was used against this organization was built on one assumption, that the people I care about make me weak. That connection is a liability. That a man who protects what is his is easier to manipulate than a man who protects nothing. He held the room. That assumption was wrong. It will not be made again. Not by anyone outside this organization, and not by anyone inside it. He let that sit. Then he sat down. The room stayed quiet for another moment. And then from the far end of the table, a man named Caruso, who had been in the organization for 22 years, and who had never once in those 22 years initiated anything in a meeting, said simply, Understood. One word. But it moved through the room like a current. One by one, around the table, the others nodded. Not applause. Not a speech. Just acknowledgement. The quiet, collective recognition of people who understood that the man at the head of their organization had just said something that was going to matter for a long time. Reyes, standing near the wall, met Adrian's eyes. Adrian gave him the smallest nod. Reyes returned it. After the meeting, Adrian sat in the empty room for a while. I was not a man who needed silence to process. He processed while moving, while talking, while running the next 3 steps in his head. That was how he had always worked. Tonight, he sat still. He thought about the meeting, about the 41 faces around the table, about Caruso's single word, and what it meant that a 22-year man had chosen that moment to speak. I thought about Sophia in the diner booth, about the prenatal appointment on Thursday, about his mother's green ink on a card that Sophia had held like it meant something. He thought about the version of himself that had signed the divorce papers and told himself it was sacrifice. I thought about what Sophia had said in the hospital corridor in the first hours after he arrived. "You're the one who decided leaving was protecting me." Did you actually believe that? Or did you believe it because it was easier than admitting you were afraid? He had said both. He had meant it. But sitting in the empty room after the meeting, he understood something more precisely. The fear had not been about Sophia's safety. He had told himself it was. Had constructed the entire architecture of the divorce around the logic of protection, that removing her from proximity to his world removed her from danger. But the truth, the real truth that he had spent 3 months not saying even to himself, was simpler and harder. He had been afraid of being seen, of being fully known by another person, of letting someone close enough to see not just the power and the control and the competence, but the parts underneath those things, the uncertainty, the grief he still carried about his father, the loneliness that operated quietly beneath the surface of a life that looked from any external vantage point like everything. Sophia saw those parts. She had always seen them, and he had called that a vulnerability, had called it danger, had built a legal document around the act of walking away from the one person who looked at all of him and did not look away. He sat with that for a long time. Not with guilt. Guilt was easy. Guilt was self-indulgent. Guilt was about the person feeling it more than the person harmed by it. He sat with it as information, as the clearest possible understanding of what had gone wrong and why. Then he took out his phone. He did not call Reyes. He did not call his attorney. He did not call anyone connected to the work that filled the space where his personal life used to be. He called his mother. She answered on the 3rd ring, and he could hear the television in the background, the show she had described as complete nonsense, and the sound of her kitchen, some quiet domestic rhythm that had been the backdrop of his childhood. "Adrian," she said. "Mama." A pause. She heard something in his voice. She always did. "Are you all right?" she said. He thought about it. "I think so," he said. "I had the full meeting tonight. And I said what needed to be said." She was quiet for a moment. "And Sophia," she said. "Sunday morning, 2 hours. We talked." He paused. Really talked. His mother made a sound, not quite a word, more like a breath releasing. The sound of someone who has been waiting for something and has just heard that it happened. "She's going to be okay," he said. "She's—" He stopped, searched for the word. "She's more herself than she was, every day." "Of course she is," his mother said. "She's Sophia." He almost smiled. "She said she missed the braciole," he said. "I know what she said. You told me. I'm telling you again because I think you should know she meant it." His mother was quiet for a moment. "Come for dinner Friday," she said. "I'll try." Not try. Come. A pause. "And call her tomorrow. Just a call. Not because there's information to exchange or appointments to confirm. Just a call." He looked at the empty room around him. "Yeah," he said. "Okay. Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Mama." He ended the call. He sat for another minute. Then he stood up, put on his coat, and walked out of the empty room into the corridor, and from the corridor into the elevator, and from the elevator into the lobby, and from the lobby out into the city night. New York at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday had its own specific energy, not the frantic early evening, not the deep night quiet, but something in between. People moving with purpose and without. The particular ambient noise of millions of lives happening simultaneously, indifferent to each other, each one carrying its own full weight. He walked for a block before getting in the car. He needed the block. He needed to feel the city around him, the actual physical fact of it, after 2 hours in a room where the weight of everything he had built had been present and undeniable. He had built something here. He had also, somewhere along the way, stopped understanding why he'd built it. The why had been standing in a hospital room 3 days ago, telling him she had called 11 times. The why was going to a prenatal appointment on Thursday. The why was a Sunday morning diner booth and 2 hours of the most honest conversation he had managed in years. He got in the car. "Home?" Marco asked. Adrian looked at the city through the window. "Yeah," he said. "Home." Marco pulled out into traffic. And for the first time in 3 months, the word home did not feel like a place Adrian was going back to alone. It felt like a direction, something he was moving toward, something that if he kept showing up to it with the honesty he had managed in the last 4 days, might eventually become what it was supposed to be. Not perfect, not without damage, but real. And between real and gone, there was only one direction worth choosing. He had chosen it. Now he had to build it. Thursday morning arrived the way important mornings tend to ordinary on the surface, carrying everything underneath. Adrian was outside the OBGYN's office on the Upper East Side at 9:45. Not 9:58, not 1 minute before 10. 9:45 because he had told Sophia he would not be late, and he had understood in the way you understand things that matter, that being on time was not the point. Being early was the point. Being the person who was already there when she arrived, that was the point. She came at 9:52. She saw him through the glass door before she came in and paused for just a second. Then she pushed the door open and walked toward him, and he could see she had slept. Actually slept, the kind that restores color, and that she was wearing her own clothes, her own coat, and carrying the particular self-possession of a woman who had made a decision and was living inside it with her eyes open. "You're early," she said. "You said not to be late." "Early isn't the same thing as on time." "No," he said. "It isn't." She held his gaze for a moment, with the look she had always given him when he did something that landed better than she expected, and she was deciding whether to acknowledge it. She decided to let it go. Come on," she said. The appointment was 40 minutes. The ultrasound technician was a cheerful woman named Deb, who had clearly been doing this for many years and had the particular gift of making a room feel completely normal, regardless of whatever complicated human situation was sitting inside it. She spoke to Sophia, directly addressed Adrian as Dad, without asking for clarification or context, and maintained a running commentary on what she was seeing that was clinical and warm at the same time. Adrian stood beside the table. He did not sit. Standing felt more honest, like he was ready to move if something happened, like he was present, rather than arranged. When the heartbeat came through the monitor, he went completely still. It was faster than he expected. Steady and fast, the particular rhythm of something very small, working very hard at the business of existing. Deb pointed to the screen and said something about position and measurements, and all the professional language of someone reading a body's story with instruments. And Adrian heard it, understood it, processed it. But what he was actually doing was listening to the heartbeat. He had not allowed himself in the week since the phone call to fully sit with the fact of it. There had been too much to manage. Ferraro Voss, the meeting, the federal inquiry, the organization, the diner on Sunday morning, the full architecture of a situation that required his complete attention. He had kept the pregnancy as a fact he was operating around rather than a reality he was standing inside. Now, he was standing inside it. The heartbeat was 154 beats per minute, Deb said. Adrian looked at the screen, at the shape that was his child. Something happened in him that had no professional category, no operational language, no precedent in any room he had ever managed. He reached out and put his hand over Sophia's without thinking about it. She did not pull away. She turned her hand over, and her fingers closed around his. Briefly, one squeeze, the particular pressure of someone communicating something they do not yet have words for. And then she released, and the moment was gone. But it had happened, and the room held the fact of it even after. Deb was still talking about measurements. Adrian heard her from what felt like a significant distance. Outside afterward on the sidewalk, they stood in the November cold, and neither of them said anything for a full 30 seconds. Then Sophia said, "Strong heartbeat." "Yes." 154. "Yes." She looked at the street. "You went quiet in there," she said. "I know." "That was the first time you've heard it." "Yes." She turned and looked at him. Her expression was not soft exactly. Sophia did not do soft when she was working something out, but it was open. The particular openness of someone who has watched another person receive something real and is deciding what to do with what they saw. "Are you okay?" she said. He looked at her. "I think I just became a father," he said. "In the actual sense. Not the legal or biological sense. The actual sense." She held his gaze for a moment. "Yeah," she said quietly. "That's what happened." A cab went by. Someone's phone rang across the street. The city continued its complete indifference. "I'm hungry," she said. He blinked. "What?" "I'm hungry. The appointment was first thing and I only had coffee." She looked at him. "Is there somewhere around here?" "There's a place 2 blocks down," he said. "Good eggs." "Eggs sounds right." She started walking. "Come on." He fell into step beside her, not behind her. Not managing the path or scanning the street with the particular alertness of a man who is always watching for threat. Just beside her. Walking 2 blocks to a place with good eggs on a Thursday morning in November. It was genuinely the most ordinary thing he had done in years. It felt like something being returned to him. Over breakfast, she told him about the design work. She had been making calls carefully, without committing to anything, reaching out to people she had worked with before the marriage, feeling out whether the professional relationships had survived 3 years of absence. Most of them had. 2 of them had apparently been waiting. "There's a residential project," she said. "Upper West Side family gut renovation. They've been through 2 designers, and they're frustrated. My old colleague Clara referred them to me." She was eating and talking the particular energy of someone who has been moving slowly for months and has just found forward momentum again. "It's significant. It's the kind of project I would have taken without hesitation 3 years ago." "Are you going to take it?" She looked at him. "I called them yesterday," she said. "The initial meeting is next Monday." "Good. I'm not asking for your opinion on whether it's a good project," she said. Not sharply, just clearly. "I know," he said. "I just meant good, that you called." She studied him for a second. "Okay," she said. "Yeah, good." She went back to her eggs. Then, the federal attorney, Kara's brother-in-law. "Did you call him?" "Wednesday. We spoke for an hour." She set down her fork. "He thinks the statement process will be straightforward. I was clearly a victim of a documented financial fraud. There's no ambiguity about my role in it." A pause. "He also said that depending on how the case develops, I may need to testify." If that happens, I'll have my attorney with me," she said. "And I'll tell them exactly what happened, because what happened is what happened, and I'm not managing the version of it that gets told." She held his gaze. "That's not a conversation I need your input on." "I know," he said. "I wasn't going to offer any." She looked at him. "You were about to," she said. He paused. She was right. He had felt the reflex rising, the protective instinct to weigh in, to structure her approach, to apply the organizational intelligence he used on everything to the situation of a woman who was entirely capable of managing her own legal testimony. "Old habit," he said. "Yes," she said. "It is." She picked up her coffee. "Work on it." "Working on it," he said. The corner of her mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Close. He called her the next evening as his mother had told him to. Just to call. She answered on the fourth ring, slightly breathless, and told him she was reorganizing Kara's second bedroom because she had more things than she had realized, and Kara's organizational system was, in Sophia's words, optimistic but not functional. He said, "Do you need help?" She said, "I need a better bookshelf." He said, "I can have one sent tomorrow." She said, "I was going to get one myself, Adrian." He said, "Okay." She said, "But if you want to come help set it up, I won't stop you." He said, "What time?" She said, "Saturday, 10. He said, 10. She said, "Don't bring anyone. No Reyes, no drivers, no, just me," he said. A pause. "Just you," she confirmed. He showed up Saturday at 10 with coffee and no one else. Kara opened the door, looked at the coffee, looked at him, and stepped aside without a word. He spent 3 hours in Kara's apartment assembling a bookshelf and moving boxes and being told by Sophia exactly where things went and not arguing about any of it. It was the most useful he had felt in years. Not powerful, not strategic, not in control of anything, just useful, present. A person with a screwdriver who showed up when he said he would. When they were done, Sophia stood in the doorway of the reorganized room and looked at it with the particular satisfaction of someone who has imposed order on something that was chaotic. "Better," she said. "Good." She turned and looked at him. He was putting on his coat. She had her arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe, and there was something in her face that she was not quite saying. "What?" he said. "Nothing." A pause. "Thank you." "For the bookshelf." "For the bookshelf," she said, "and for not making it anything other than a bookshelf." He understood what she meant. "You're welcome," he said. The federal case moved faster than anyone anticipated. By the third week of November, the prosecutor's office had formally opened an investigation into Marcus Elian Voss. The documentation from Ferraro's phone, combined with the voluntary account from Voss's associate, and 3 months of financial records that his attorney had submitted as part of the terms agreement, built something the federal prosecutor described to Adrian's attorney as unusually clean. Voss hired 4 lawyers. It did not matter how many lawyers he hired. The money trail was documented. The communications were authenticated. The instruction to extend Sophia's financial pressure, written in Voss's own language, routed through Ferraro, time-stamped to a specific Tuesday afternoon, was not a gray area. Sophia gave her statement in the second week of November. She went with Kara's brother-in-law, a calm and precise man named David Osei, who had been doing federal cases for 18 years, and who told her before they went in, "Say exactly what happened. No editorializing, no interpretation. What happened?" She said exactly what happened. She told them about the 11 calls, about the settlement that never arrived, about the shared apartment in the Bronx, about the 2 restaurant jobs, about the bathroom floor and the positive pregnancy test, about the hospital on a Tuesday night. She was in the room for 2 hours. When she came out, David said the prosecutor had looked at her like she was exactly what they needed. She called Adrian that evening. "I gave the statement," she said. "How are you?" "Tired," she said. "And relieved." "It sounds strange. I went in there and told a federal prosecutor about the worst 3 months of my life, and I came out feeling—" She paused. "Like I put it somewhere it belongs, instead of carrying it." "That doesn't sound strange," he said. "No. No." A pause. "How's the organization?" she said. The question surprised him. She asked it directly, without performance, the way you ask about someone's work when you are genuinely interested and are no longer pretending you're not connected to it. "Stable," he said. "The full accounting of who had contact with Ferraro is done. The secondary investigation into Voss's broader structure is ongoing." He paused. "It's going to take time. He wasn't operating alone in this city. But you know more than you did. Significantly more. Good." She was quiet for a moment. "Is there anything I should know for my own safety?" He had been waiting for her to ask that. He had been thinking about how to answer it. "Yes," he said. "And I'm going to tell you. Not a managed version. The actual assessment." She said, "Okay. Voss is neutralized. The people who were positioned to work against you directly have been addressed. The secondary structure exists, but it is not currently interested in you. You were useful to them as leverage against me, and that leverage no longer exists because you are not a secret and you are not isolated. He paused. The most honest thing I can tell you is that being connected to me carries a permanent ambient risk that is not something I can eliminate. I can manage it. I do manage it. But I cannot tell you it doesn't exist. She was quiet. I know that, she said. I always knew that. I married you knowing that. I know. What I didn't know, she said, was that the danger I ended up in came from inside your organization, not from your enemies outside it. A pause. That's the part that I'm still working through. I know, he said. That part belongs to me. She did not argue with that. The baby and I, she said carefully. What does protection look like in practice, without it being containment? I thought about it, seriously. It looks like Reyes having a contact protocol, he said. Not surveillance, not someone following you. A number you call if something feels wrong, and a person who responds within minutes. It looks like you're building having security infrastructure you're aware of. It looks like me knowing your schedule, not so I can manage it, but so I know where you are if I need to reach you quickly. He paused. It looks like being honest with you when the threat level changes, instead of making decisions about what you need to know. She absorbed that. That, she said, is the version I could live with. Good. It's not the version you've done before. No, he said. It's not. But it's the version you're describing now. Yes. A longer pause. I'll text you the building address, she said. Kara's place, for the protocol. Okay. Adrian. Yes. You just agreed to protect me without controlling me. Yes. Don't undo it. I won't. December arrived. The city went through its familiar seasonal transformation, and with it came the particular energy of people moving toward something, toward the end of a year, toward whatever they had decided the next one would hold. Sophia's design project launched. The Monday meeting on the Upper West Side had gone well enough that the client signed the engagement letter the following Thursday. She called him that Thursday afternoon, not because she needed anything, but because she wanted to tell someone, and she wanted that someone to be him. They signed, she said. Tell me about the project, he said. She told him. For 20 minutes, she talked about the apartment, the layout, the family's specific needs, the renovation timeline, the design direction she was moving toward. She talked about it with the animation of someone doing work they genuinely love, and he listened with the full attention he gave to things that mattered. When she finished, she said, "You actually listened." Yes. You didn't offer to fund anything or connect me with contractors. You didn't ask me to. A pause. You're getting better at this, she said. Trying, he said. She laughed, briefly quietly, but it was real. The prenatal appointments became a rhythm. Every 2 weeks, and then every week, as the pregnancy progressed, Adrian was there early, always never late. He learned Deb's schedule and knew which appointments she was covering and which were handled by the other technician, a quiet man named Paul, who had a different but equally effective way of making the room feel manageable. He learned the language of the appointments. The measurements, the percentiles, the specific vocabulary of fetal development that Sophia had already absorbed completely, and that he arrived at through the accumulation of consecutive Thursdays spent standing beside that table. The baby was a girl. They found out on a Thursday in the second week of December. Deb said it with the particular practiced warmth of someone who has delivered this information thousands of times and still understands that every time is the first time for the person receiving it. Sophia made a sound that was not a word. Adrian looked at the screen. A girl. He had not had a preference. He was certain of that. He had genuinely not cared, had told himself he hadn't cared, and believed it. But when Deb said the word, something in him responded with such complete and immediate recognition that he understood the preference he hadn't known he had. He had wanted a daughter. He looked at Sophia. She was looking at the screen with tears running down her face, without any effort to stop them, without apology, without the careful composure she maintained through most things. Just the unmediated fact of it. He put his hand over hers. She turned her hand over. This time she did not let go. She held his hand for the rest of the appointment. When they walked out, she was still collecting herself, wiping her face with the back of her free hand, breathing the way you breathe when something hits you harder than you prepared for. "A girl," she said. "Yeah." "I didn't know if I had a preference," she said. "Me neither." She looked at him. "Did you?" He paused. "Yes," he said. She understood without him saying more. "Me too," she said. They stood on the sidewalk. "I have a meeting at 1, she said. "Contractor walkthrough. I'll let you go." She did not move immediately. "Adrian." She said his name the way she had been saying it recently, with the weight of everything, but without the armor that used to come with it. "I need to tell you something." He waited. "I've been thinking about the question I told you I wasn't going to answer at the diner," she said. "The question of what else this could be." The sidewalk. November, cold December now. The city moving around them. He held very still. "I'm not answering it today either," she said. "I want to be clear about that." "Okay. But She stopped. "I'm not thinking about it." He looked at her. She held his gaze with the directness that was fundamentally hers, that had always been hers, and that he had spent too long trying to manage rather than simply meet. "Okay," he said. "That's all," she said. "Okay," he said again. She almost smiled. "You really have gotten better at okay." "Working on it," he said. She turned and walked toward the street to flag a cab. He watched her go. She got in the cab, and it pulled into traffic. He stood there for a moment. A girl. Christmas Eve, his mother's house in Brooklyn. This was not new. Christmas Eve had always been Juliana's occasion, the one event in the year that Adrian attended without negotiation, without scheduling around, without sending word that something had come up. He had been doing it since he was 7 years old, and he did not intend to stop. What was new was that Sophia was there, not because he had arranged it. Not because he had managed the situation toward that outcome. Because his mother had called Sophia directly using the number on the card with the green ink, and had said simply, "Christmas Eve, my house, 7 o'clock. Don't argue with me about it." Sophia had told him this on the phone with the specific tone of someone who found it both exasperating and completely in keeping with everything she knew about Juliana Valenti. "She said don't argue with her," Sophia said. "She says that to everyone," Adrian said. "It's usually correct." "I'm coming," Sophia said. "I just want you to know I came because she asked, not because." "I know," he said. "Okay," she said. "Good." She arrived at 7 exactly with Kara, who had been included in the invitation as a matter of Juliana's unconditional hospitality, and the house had the smell it always had on Christmas Eve: garlic, and something slow-cooked, and the particular warmth of a kitchen that has been running since morning. His mother embraced Sophia at the door, the same way she had in the hospital room, completely without asking permission. Sophia leaned into it the same way she had then. Kara stood behind her and said to no one in particular, "I want this woman to adopt me." Juliana over Sophia's shoulder said, "There's room." The evening was what evenings at Juliana's house had always been: full, warm, overlapping in the way of large-spirited people who do not manage their joy carefully. There was food and conversation, and the particular noise of a house that has always been a house, rather than a residence. Adrian sat across from Sophia at one point in the evening and watched her talk with his mother. Watched the ease of it, the way they moved between topics with the comfort of two people who have established something over time and are now simply living inside it. She caught him watching. He did not look away. She held his gaze for a moment. Then she turned back to his mother, who was describing something about the garden and the specific failure of this year's zucchini, which had been, according to Juliana, an embarrassment. After dinner, after Kara had helped with the dishes over Juliana's protests, and his mother had eventually surrendered with good grace after the kitchen was quiet, and Kara had drifted into conversation with a cousin on the back porch. After all of that, Adrian and Sophia ended up standing in the hallway outside the kitchen, not by design, just by the natural movement of a full house. "Good evening," she said. "Yes," he said. "Your mother made me eat 3 portions of the braciole. She does that." "I'm aware." She looked at him. "I've been thinking about what I said outside the appointment on Thursday." "I know. I meant it when I said I wasn't answering the question today." "I know that too." She looked at him carefully. "But I want to tell you something," she said. "Not an answer. Just—" She paused. "Just a true thing. Tell me. The version of you from 6 weeks ago," she said. "The one who made decisions about my life and called it protection. I don't know if I could have gotten back to that person. I'm honest about that." She held his gaze. "The version of you from the last 6 weeks. The one who shows up early and assembles bookshelves and doesn't offer opinions I didn't ask for and calls just to call that person is someone I'm interested in." He was quiet. "That's not a yes," she said. "It's not a timeline. It's not a promise." "I know," he said. "But it's true," she said. "I know," he said again. "And Sophia," he stopped. "I'm not going anywhere. Whatever pace this is, whatever the shape of it, I'm here. I'm not managing toward an outcome. I'm just—" He looked at her. "Here." She held his gaze for a long moment. And then she did something she had not done since before the divorce. Since before the legal proceedings. Since before the careful distance had become the entire architecture of their relationship. She stepped forward and put her head against his chest. Not an embrace. Not a declaration. Just that her head against his chest and his arms coming up around her, with the instinct of someone returning to something they should not have left. They stood like that for a moment, in the hallway of his mother's house in Brooklyn on Christmas Eve, with the sounds of Kara and the cousin on the back porch, and Juliana in the kitchen starting on something else, because Juliana was never fully finished with a kitchen. Sophia stepped back. She did not say anything. He did not say anything. She went back toward the kitchen. He stood in the hallway for a moment, and then he followed her. The new year came. January moved through itself with the particular determination of a month that knows it is carrying everything people decided to be different about. Sophia's project moved forward. The contractor walkthrough had gone well. The design direction was set, and she was spending 3 days a week on site and 2 days at the desk in Kara's reorganized second bedroom, which had been transformed apparently into a fully functional home studio. She sent him photos sometimes. Not often. She was not a person who narrated her life in real time. But occasionally. A detail she was working out. A material she was choosing between. Once a view from the apartment's window that she had described as the reason the whole project is worth it. He saved every one. He did not tell her that. The federal case against Voss moved through its process with the slow deliberateness of institutional machinery. There were delays and filings, and the back and forth of legal procedure that moved on its own timeline, regardless of anyone's urgency. His attorney provided updates. Adrian received them, filed them in the appropriate mental category, and returned to the work of running what he ran. What had changed, what anyone paying close attention would have noticed, was the texture of how he ran it. The full meeting in December had not been a one-time event. It had become a monthly structure, a room where information moved in both directions, rather than flowing only downward. Where Adrian asked questions, as much as he issued direction, where the people who had built something with him understood that the man at the head of the table was operating with more of himself present than before. Reyes noticed it first. Said nothing about it because Reyes did not narrate things that were working. He simply adjusted his own approach and response, and the adjustment made them more effective together than they had been in years. 3 people who had gone to Voss during the crisis came back. Not to reclaim positions, those were gone. But to account for themselves. To sit in a room and explain the calculation they had made and what they understood now that they had not understood then. Adrian listened to all 3. He did not restore their positions, but he listened. He gave them each the full weight of his attention, and he said what he thought was true, that people make calculations under pressure that they would not make otherwise, and that what mattered was not only the calculation, but what they did when the pressure passed. Two of the three understood that. One didn't. The one who didn't left the city voluntarily, which Adrian considered the most honest possible outcome. February brought the last stretch. Sophia was 7 months pregnant and had moved not back to his house, not to something he arranged. She had found an apartment. Her own lease, her own name, her own furniture, that she had chosen piece by piece over the course of a month with Kara, and with the specific opinionated satisfaction of someone who had not had their own space for a long time and was not going to rush it. The apartment was in the West Village. She called him when she had the keys. "I have the keys," she said. "How does it feel?" he said. "Like mine," she said. "It feels exactly like mine." "Good," he said, and he meant it completely. "I want you to come see it," she said. "This weekend. I want you to see where she's going to come home to." He went that Saturday. She showed him every room. She narrated each one with the particular pride of someone who built something from their own choosing. "This is where the nursery goes. This is the corner I'm keeping for the design work. This is the kitchen, which needs exactly one more cabinet, and I know where it's going." He stood in the nursery doorway. It was not furnished yet. She had plans. She told him she had a list, but the light came through the window with the quality of a room that was waiting to be inhabited, that had the specific potential of an empty space that knows what it's for. "She'll be here in 8 weeks, Sophia said, standing beside him. 8 weeks, he said. "Are you terrified?" she said. She asked it lightly, but she was actually asking. He considered the true answer. "Yes," he said, "and I'm not afraid of being terrified." She looked at him. "That's new," she said. "Yes," he said. "It is." She turned and looked at the room again. "We're going to figure it out," she said. Not to him specifically. To the room. To herself. To the 8 weeks. "We're going to figure it out." "Yes," he said. "We are." The baby came on a Thursday, which felt in retrospect exactly right. Thursday had been their day since the first prenatal appointment, the day that belonged to the two of them, standing beside a table, listening to a heartbeat. It made a kind of sense that she chose a Thursday. Sophia called him at 4 a.m. He answered on the first ring. "It's time," she said. "I'm on my way," he said. He was there in 14 minutes. Kara was already there, already in the role she had clearly assigned herself. The person who manages logistics and makes sure everyone is where they need to be, and does not require any emotional management herself, which freed everyone else to require it. Adrian was allowed in the room. Sophia had told him 2 weeks before, "I want you there, not because I can't do it alone, because she should come into the world with both of us present." He had said, "I'll be there." He was there. 17 hours of labor, which Sophia moved through with the particular fierce concentration of a woman who does hard things by going completely into them rather than around them. She held his hand for some of it. She told him to stop being hovery for some of it. She asked him to just talk, just say something, anything for part of the early afternoon when the hours were moving slowly. He talked. He talked about the first time he saw her, not the arranged version of the story he had told at their wedding, the smooth narrative, but the actual first time, which was at a gallery opening he had not wanted to attend and had almost left early, and she had been standing near the back arguing with a friend about something. And the argument was clearly a good one, because she was completely absorbed in it and had not noticed him at all, and he had found that so immediately interesting that he had stayed. She said at some point in the middle of the afternoon, "You never told me it was a gallery." "I didn't think it mattered," he said. "It matters," she said. "I love that it was a gallery." "I know," he said. "That's why I didn't tell you. It seemed too perfect," she said. "Yes," he said. She shook her head. Then another contraction came, and she stopped talking, and he stopped talking, and they got back to the work of the day. She was born at 9:17 p.m. The doctor placed her on Sophia's chest, and the room which had been the contained urgent space of medical procedure became something else entirely. Something that did not have a professional category. Sophia looked at her daughter. She made a sound that was not a word. She held her with both arms, and her face was the face of someone arriving somewhere they have been moving toward for a very long time. Adrian stood beside the bed. The nurse looked at him. "Would you like to hold her?" she said. He looked at Sophia. Sophia looked at him. "Come here," she said. He sat on the edge of the bed. Sophia transferred the baby carefully with the instinctive precision of someone who has already understood the grammar of holding her. The baby weighed almost nothing and everything at the same time. She was red-faced and loud and completely certain of her own importance. She opened her eyes. She looked at him. He looked back. "Hi," he said very quietly. Just that. Hi. The ordinary word. The same one Sophia had used when she called him on the first Saturday, the word that asked whether ordinary was available. It was. It was available. The baby closed her eyes. She trusted completely, and without evidence, that the arms holding her were safe. I understood in that moment what it meant to be given something you had not earned yet, and to decide with complete certainty that you were going to spend the rest of your life becoming worthy of it. They named her Eliana. Sophia chose it. She told him the morning after, when the room had quieted and Eliana was sleeping in the bassinet beside the bed, and the city outside was doing whatever the city does at 7 a.m. on a Friday in March. "Eliana," he said. "Is that okay?" she said. He looked at her. "It is perfect," he said. She nodded. "I thought so too." He looked at the bassinet, at Eliana, at the 17 hours and the gallery story, and the Thursday that became the day that mattered, and the 10 p.m. phone call that had broken open a man who had convinced himself that being broken open was the one thing he could not afford. "Sophia," he said. She looked at him. "The question you said you weren't answering," he said. She held his gaze. "I know," she said. "I'm not asking for an answer," he said. "I just want to say—" He stopped. "I want to say that whatever the answer is, and whenever you arrive at it, I will still be here. Not because I'm managing toward it, because there is nowhere else I want to be." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Adrian." "Yes." "I already know the answer." He went still. "I've known for a while," she said. "I just needed to make sure you were the person I thought I was seeing." She held his gaze with the full, unguarded directness that was completely and entirely hers. "You are." He looked at her. "So yes," she said. "The answer is yes." He reached across and took her hand. She let him. Outside New York went on being New York, enormous and different, full of its own noise and urgency, and the 10,000 stories of people arriving at the things that matter. In the room, a man who had once convinced himself that love was a liability held the hand of the woman who had shown him through the hardest way possible that it was the only investment that ever truly paid. And in the bassinet beside them, Eliana Valenti slept. She slept with the absolute confidence of someone who had arrived exactly where she was supposed to be. And she was not wrong. Some things end so that better things can begin. Some people walk away from each other so that when they finally walk back, they arrive as who they were always meant to become. And some love stories don't start with a perfect moment. They start with a 10 p.m. phone call in the rain, a man who almost didn't answer, and a woman who had survived everything designed to erase her. That is not a weakness. That is the whole story. And it was only the beginning.